An 800-pound woman scrubbed herself at the river's edge, the water around her reeking with a foul stench that had already poisoned the livestock of the local beastman tribe. The tribe members were furious, but dared not speak out, for she was the chief's daughter. Despite being both ugly and obese, she had shamelessly forced 5 beastmen as handsome as sculpted gods to be her mates. The mates, however, utterly despised her and refused to ever share a room with her. Unwilling to give up, the obese woman secretly mixed the juice of an aphrodisiac fruit into their food. She herself guzzled 3 large barrels of it, hoping to finally ignite a flame of passion. But as she lunged at her first mate, Kael, the excessive dose backfired, and she dropped dead from the potent poison. Just then, Arya, a survivor from a post-apocalyptic world, transmigrated into this body. She opened her eyes to find a stunningly handsome beastman pinning her down. Panicked, she delivered a powerful kick and scrambled out of the cave. From within, Kael's enraged roar echoed a sound that promised to tear her limb from limb. After running a long distance, she finally dared to stop. Memories that didn't belong to her flooded her mind. It turned out the original owner of this body was a lazy, ugly, and ultimately a cannon fodder character. The story's true heroine, a girl named Chloe, was a player who had transmigrated into this world as if it were a game. According to the plot, Chloe was supposed to be found by Kael, brought back to the tribe, and would then live a sweet romantic life with the 5 beastmen. Meanwhile, Arya, the original owner, was destined to be completely written out of the story. Having survived the apocalypse for so long, Arya had no desire to be a mere plot device in this seemingly peaceful, primitive world. She believed she could live well on her own. Her wood elemental ability from the apocalypse had come with her. Her new plan was simple: find a way to sever the mate bond with those 5 beastmen. Why would she need men? Living alone sounded much better. Just then, a voice echoed in her mind. "Ding, the super charm system is now activating." Through the system, Arya learned that by conquering the 5 beastmen and increasing her personal charm value, she could unlock essential survival skills and items. The difficulty, however, was hellish. Currently, the favorability scores of all 5 mates were at 90. She knew they disliked her, but she hadn't realized it was to this extent. Kael's was a staggering 100. Thinking of his cold, murderous eyes, she felt a shiver of dread. As a newcomer, Arya received a newbie gift package. Tempted by the system, she decided to accept its challenge. Her body was filthy and smelly. It took 3 or 4 washes with the new shampoo just to get her hair clean. A slick of black grease mixed with unknown leaves floated to the river's surface, turning the water around her black. After 3 long hours of scrubbing, she felt reborn, as if she'd lost several pounds. Her entire body felt refreshed and light, and even her mood improved. Just as she was about to step onto the bank, a massive splash erupted behind her. Water shot into the air, creating a huge vortex. Startled, Arya thought it was an earthquake and instinctively looked over. A butchered wild ox was floating on the water. Her gaze shifted to the riverbank, where she saw her second mate Draven standing there. He was staring at her, a look of shock on his face, as if he never expected to find her here. Arya instinctively crouched down, hiding her body in the water. Draven immediately assumed this was another of her deliberate attempts at seduction, that she had been lurking here waiting for him. The original owner had, after all, gone to great lengths to try and sleep with her 5 mates. Draven's eyes, filled with disgust, grew cold. "How disgusting. Get lost." His voice was as chilling as a winter wind. Arya was furious. She was the one who was exposed, wasn't she? Why was he acting like the victim? Even if this man was her mate and a target for her mission, she refused to tolerate his rotten attitude. "Do you own this riverbank?" she retorted sharply. "I was here bathing first. You're the one who barged in and saw my entire body. You didn't even apologize, and now you're telling me to get lost. Is this the etiquette of your snake tribe?" Her sharp, logical words seemed to leave Draven speechless. He looked at her face, which, while still marked with pimples, was now much cleaner than its previously greasy state. It was no longer a complete mess. Before, whenever this female saw him, she would fawn over him with a dazed expression. No matter how harsh his words were, she never talked back, only followed him around trying to please him. Today was completely different. Not only was she articulate, but she had also become clean. Draven glanced at the murky, scum-filled water around her, a flicker of disgust in his eyes. "I didn't know you were here." He pulled the wild ox onto the bank to prevent it from being swept away, then turned and left without another word. Arya watched his retreating back and let out a sigh of relief. She climbed ashore, washed her dirty animal hide dress, and put it back on. Returning to the cave, she found that Kael was gone. She set down her new shampoo and soap, then picked up a few fish she had caught earlier and left. She remembered a small secluded hillside near the tribe that was rarely visited and free of dangerous beasts. She decided to go there to cook her meal. After some effort, she finally got a fire started. She skewered the cleaned fish on sharpened sticks and roasted them slowly over the flames. The sizzling fish released a fragrant aroma. In the apocalypse, eating uncontaminated fish was as rare as winning the lottery. She ate 3 or 4, and though still hungry, she decided to stick to her weight loss plan and save the rest for breakfast. She had only taken a few steps when, with a sudden thud, someone fell from the sky, landing right in front of her. Startled, she instinctively stepped back. She saw that the woman's clothing looked very modern, like from her time in the apocalypse, and she immediately recognized the other person's identity. It was Chloe. Wasn't she supposed to be found by Kael? Why had she appeared here like this, falling right in front of her? Arya looked up at the sky. To fall from such a height and not die. She stepped closer and turned the girl over. Her skin was fair and her features were delicate. She wasn't stunningly beautiful, but she was pleasant-looking, what one might call an ordinary cute girl. But in this beastman world where most females had dark, rough skin, she was a rare beauty. Arya checked for a pulse and found her breathing was steady. She was likely just unconscious from the fall. Chloe, the heroine. Once she was in the tribe, the story would begin. Then the entire tribe's beastmen would swarm around her, including the 5 mates who belonged to the original owner. With Chloe as the new center of attention, Arya feared she would become even more despised, making her mission of conquest nearly impossible. She bent down, hoisted Chloe onto her shoulder, and headed deep into the forest, intending to leave her somewhere far, far away. Whether Chloe lived or died was of no concern to her. After years of surviving the apocalypse, she had long learned to be cold and selfish. It was a necessary rule for survival. She deliberately walked a great distance, afraid Kael might find Chloe and bring her back. She found a secluded spot, confirming it was far from the tribe and a place no one would normally come to hunt. Only then did she toss Chloe to the ground. "You're on your own," Arya said coldly. Seeing that night was falling, she didn't dare linger in the forest and turned to leave. On her way back, she gathered a good amount of wild fruit and was lucky enough to find a nest of bird eggs. She also spotted several edible wild greens. By the time she reached the tribe, it was completely dark. In the tribe's main square, a huge bonfire blazed with beastmen of all ages gathered around it, roasting meat, laughing, and chatting happily. Just as she was about to walk past, a woman named Lyra saw her. After a brief pause, she started walking toward Arya. Lyra was the most beautiful female in the tribe, with a stunning figure and a bold personality. She already had 7 mates, all outstanding beastmen, but she wasn't satisfied. She coveted the original owner's mates, especially Kael and Draven. Consequently, she despised the original owner and would often pick fights with her. Seeing Lyra approach Arya didn't even have to guess what she was about to say. It would surely be some taunt meant to belittle her. "Arya, we all know about you drugging Kael today," Lyra said, her voice dripping with contempt and ridicule. She spoke loudly, ensuring everyone nearby could hear. One by one, they turned to look, their faces showing open disdain and disgust. "You are utterly shameless. Kael doesn't like you at all, and yet you resort to such despicable tricks." Arya ignored the stares of the crowd, her expression calm as she looked at Lyra. "So what's it to you?" Enraged by Arya's indifferent attitude, Lyra's face darkened. Then her eyes fell on the wild fruit and bird eggs in Arya's hands. She sneered. "Truly useless. A female who has to find her own food. If I were you, I'd just ram my head into a wall and end it all." A wave of mocking laughter rippled through the crowd. Just as Lyra finished speaking, a tall figure emerged from the crowd. He held a piece of roasted meat and walked straight toward Arya. The man was tall and well-built with handsome features. This was the original owner's third mate, Finn. His true form was a white nine-tailed fox. Arya recalled that the white nine-tailed fox clan was extremely powerful on this continent, even ruling over the Beast King city, where they were considered nobility. She didn't know what connection Finn had to the Beast King city or why he had ended up in the wolf tribe. All she knew was that every year when the tribe went to the Beast King city for the trade fair to exchange for salt, Finn never went. While Arya was lost in thought, Finn stopped in front of her. He held out the roasted meat, his face impassive. "Take it," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. This scene stunned every beastman and female present, including Lyra. She stared at Finn in disbelief, unable to comprehend why he would do such a thing. Didn't he hate Arya too? But then she remembered that Finn had always provided meat for Arya, which only fueled her frustration. Finn did indeed detest Arya, but he had never let her go without meat, making him a responsible mate in a sense. If not for him, she could never have gotten so fat. Arya glanced at him, a slight smile playing on her lips as she took the roasted meat. "Thank you." Her voice was clear and pleasant like a songbird's, a stark contrast to her pimple-covered ugly face. Finn looked at her surprised. This was the first time he had ever heard the words "thank you" from her lips. Although he found her behavior today strange, he didn't dwell on it. He was about to turn and leave, but remembering her past behavior, he quickly added, "I just don't want others to misunderstand and think I can't provide for my own female." With that, he turned and walked away. Hearing his explanation, Lyra burst out laughing, her eyes filled with mockery. Before she could utter another sarcastic remark, several more pieces of meat flew from different directions, landing at Arya's feet like discarded trash. There were 3 pieces in total, each from a different animal. She looked toward where the meat had come from and saw they were from Draven Asher and Ronan. Kale was nowhere near them, sitting alone and eating his own roasted meat, looking as if nothing was wrong. She wondered how the effects of the love potion had been resolved. Seeing this, the jealousy in Lyra's eyes was almost impossible to hide. "They're just tossing you scraps," she sneered. Arya looked at her coldly, saying nothing. Lyra was right. The 3 pieces of meat had been thrown at her like garbage. Was this charity for a beggar? Her brows furrowed slightly. She wanted to throw the meat back in their faces, but her time in the apocalypse had taught her the value of food. Waste not, want not, she thought. Though the gesture was humiliating, it was all good meat, fresh at a glance. Just as she was about to bend down and pick it up, a man's voice roared, "Don't you dare pick that up!" Arya froze and turned to see an angry-faced man striding toward her. This was the original owner's brother, Marcus. His strength was considerable in the wolf tribe, second only to her 5 mates. He also despised the original owner and usually ignored her completely. She had no idea what had set him off now. He walked up to Arya, and seeing the 3 pieces of meat on the ground, his expression turned ugly. He looked up and glared at the 3 men. "What is the meaning of this?" he raged. "Is this how you treat your own female?" Though he also disliked Arya, she was still his biological sister. Seeing her humiliated like this in public made him lose face as well. If the original owner's parents were here, they would surely feel the same shame. Draven Asher and Ronan said nothing, acting as if they hadn't heard him. Their dismissive attitude only enraged Marcus further. He turned his anger toward Kale, who was sitting alone, calmly eating his roasted meat. "Kale!" Marcus's voice was loud, causing all the beastmen present to turn their attention to the lone figure. "Don't you forget that my sister is your female. You are her male and you have a responsibility to care for her. Are you trying to starve her to death by not giving her any food?" Kale paused, his silver eyes turning to Marcus. His handsome face was a mask of ice. His voice was chilling. "And must I report to you every time I decide to feed my own female?" Marcus froze under Kyle's bone-chilling gaze. His imposing presence instantly deflated by half, but he still tried to stand his ground. "Of course you don't need to report to me when you feed her, but you haven't given her anything. Are you trying to starve her? Don't you forget, no matter how unpleasant she is still your female." A mocking sneer formed on Kyle's lips, and his silver eyes locked onto Arya, his expression dripping with open disgust. "Just look at how fat she is. Ugly and fat like a sow. Starving her for a meal might actually help her lose some weight. Ha ha ha! A roar of laughter erupted across the square. Everyone seemed to agree with Kael. The other females in particular looked at Arya with eyes full of schadenfreude and jealousy, jealous that she had 5 such powerful and outstanding mates, yet she was so ungrateful, causing trouble every day. Now she was as fat as a pig, and with that ugly face just looking at her was nauseating. No wonder she had to resort to drugging them. What beastman could possibly sleep with someone so hideous? In this beastman world, while healthy was considered beautiful, fat and healthy were 2 entirely different things. Hearing the derisive laughter and feeling the strange stares from all around, Arya felt a hot flush of embarrassment no matter how thick her skin was. Her gaze shot toward Kael and she ground her teeth. That detestable man. His words are pure venom. This was clearly his revenge for her drugging him and then kicking him. But it only strengthened her resolve. She would lose weight. Forget everyone else. Even she couldn't stand her own appearance. Marcus looked awkward. He opened his mouth to retort, but looking at his sister's current state. Forget Kael, even he found it hard to look at her. But at least she knew how to bathe now. That was some small progress. "Brother, I won't be eating tonight," Arya said softly to Marcus. With that, she bent down and picked up the 3 pieces of meat from the ground, planning to save them for breakfast tomorrow. Marcus frowned at her actions, feeling a second-hand sense of shame. "If you want to lose weight, then just throw the meat away." She looked at him in surprise. "Brother, food is too precious. So many beastmen don't have enough to eat. How can we just throw it away? Isn't that a waste?" Marcus stared at her astonished. This gluttonous, lazy, and crude sister of his was capable of saying such things, but then he remembered her past behavior and assumed she was just putting on an act. She would probably sneak off and eat the meat later. "If you know food is precious, then you should eat less. Look at the state you're in," Marcus said with a disgusted look at her round figure, then turned and walked away. "I will lose weight. I absolutely will," Arya vowed to herself. "Just you wait. I'll get so slim it'll blind their wolf eyes." Ignoring the mocking and contemptuous stares from the crowd, she left with the meat in her hands. Arya had only walked a short distance when she felt a cold aura. She turned her head and met the icy, serpentine eyes of Draven, which made her jump. Does this man not make a sound when he walks? He had somehow circled around and was now standing in front of her. "Is there something you need?" she asked, stopping and studying him warily. Draven stared at her, his voice cold. "What did you mean by what you said today at the river?" Arya blinked, a look of confusion on her face. She had said a lot of things at the river. Which part was this man referring to? "I don't remember," she said. She wasn't feigning ignorance. She genuinely had no idea. Draven's eyes narrowed. "You said, 'Do you own this riverbank? I can be here if I want to.'" She was surprised he brought that up. At the time, she had only said it as a quick retort to his awful attitude and his command for her to get lost. It was just an instinctive comeback. "Oh, that. I was just saying things. I didn't mean anything by it. Don't worry about it," she explained with a small, awkward laugh. Draven stared at her intently, and it was impossible to tell if he believed her. After a moment, he suddenly said, "From now on, you are not allowed to try and seduce me like you did today." With that cold parting shot, he turned and left. Seduce him. When did I ever seduce him? I was clearly bathing, and he was the one who barged in. She pouted and muttered under her breath. What a self-righteous man. But in a way, this was good. It saved her the trouble of trying to figure out how to conquer him. With that thought, she continued on her way. Back near the caves, Kael happened to be passing by and overheard her last sentence, "What a self-righteous man." He stopped, and his silver eyes fixated on Arya with an unreadable expression. Arya sensed the stare from behind her. She turned and met his unfathomable silver eyes, which sent a jolt through her. She had no idea how long he had been standing there or how much he had heard. But then she remembered she had been insulting Draven, not him, and she instantly felt a sense of relief. Kael watched her for a moment, his thoughts hidden before quickly averting his gaze and striding away. Arya watched his retreating back and let out a quiet sigh of relief. The man's aura was too intense. She felt like she could barely stand up to it. Thinking about what had just happened, she frowned, a deep frustration settling in her heart. All 5 mates were difficult to conquer, and they all hated her. The difficulty level was immense. Asher and Ronan, the other 2, treated her like she was thin air, finding even the act of looking at her repulsive. For a moment, she wanted to give up. But then she thought of the cleansing kit in her cave and the rewards the system had promised, and her spirit rallied. It's just conquering men, right? I can do this. Worst case, I'll just have to be a little more shameless. Clutching the meat, she walked toward the original owner's cave. The original owner lived alone, not with her 5 mates. Each of them had their own separate caves, deliberately dug far away to avoid her pestering. The original owner's cave was at the foot of the mountain, while Kael's was at the very peak. The clear intention was that the obese original owner would find the climb too strenuous to reach him. Draven was even more cunning. His cave was built into a cliff face behind the mountain. Snakes preferred damp, dark, and dangerous places, and it was inaccessible to a normal person. The other 3, while not in such bizarre locations, still lived halfway up the mountain, a great distance from her cave. Logically, a female in the tribe who had mates would move in with them. The original owner had wanted to, but they had never agreed. Arya, on the other hand, thought this was perfect. If she had to live with 5 beastmen who despised her right from the start, she wouldn't know how to handle it, let alone them. In any case, she needed time to adjust. She quickly returned to the original owner's cave. It was pitch black inside, save for a few slivers of moonlight filtering through the entrance, which was just enough to see the interior. She took one look around and couldn't stand it. It was an absolute mess, littered with garbage everywhere, practically a landfill. She had no choice but to start cleaning. She threw out what needed to be thrown out and piled the things that needed washing at the entrance, planning to take them to the river the next morning. The filthy, stinking animal hide from the stone bed was also dragged out and added to the pile. It was so dirty she couldn't possibly sleep on it until it was clean. After a while of hard work, a lot of trash was gone, and the cave felt much more spacious. Besides a stone bed in the corner, there were only 2 stone bowls and a bone knife. All the animal hides were now in a pile at the entrance, not a single one intact. Though the cave was now clean, a lingering, unpleasant smell hung in the air. Arya decided she would gather some fresh fruits and flowers tomorrow to freshen it up. She looked at the bare, hard stone bed. Without even a single animal hide to cover it, she worried she would catch a cold in the low nighttime temperatures. The temperature difference between day and night in the Beastman world was significant. Without a blanket, she would definitely get cold. Arya glanced at the pile of filthy hides at the entrance. She truly didn't have the courage to bring them back inside to use as a cover. Instead, she gathered some dry firewood from nearby and built a small fire in the middle of the cave, both for warmth and to ward off any wild beasts. She had been busy for hours and was now exhausted and famished. I can't eat. If I eat any more, I'll really die from being fat," she chanted to herself, trying to self-hypnotize. With great difficulty, she tore her gaze away from the roasted meat and fish. To distract herself, she sat down by the fire and began to cultivate her elemental ability. The Beastman world was incredibly rich in wood elemental spiritual energy-making cultivation, remarkably smooth, much better than in the apocalypse. Arya felt that it wouldn't be long before she could advance to the second level. Thinking of her current unbearable face, she knew that although her ability had been downgraded and its healing effects were much weaker, a simple detoxification was still possible. She opened her palm, facing it upward. With a thought, a small green vine emerged, glowing with a beautiful, faint green light. The vine grew longer and longer, creeping up onto her face. The green light enveloped her entire face and began the detoxification process. As the energy seeped into her skin, her face started to feel very itchy. Then a large amount of oil and dirt was expelled from her pores. Touching it with her hand was utterly disgusting. She couldn't stand it and immediately went to the river to wash her face. In the bright moonlight, she looked at her reflection in the water. Although there were still many pimples, they had clearly subsided and were no longer oozing. It looked much better. She touched her face, her mood lifting considerably. She decided to continue using her ability to detoxify her skin over the next few days. With consistent treatment, her face might clear up completely. Just as she was about to stand up and leave, she suddenly heard the sound of splashing water coming from upstream. Curiously, she looked over, and what she saw left her stunned. In the moonlight, a man was bathing in the river. His upper body was bare, his bronze skin glistening seductively under the moonlight, revealing a perfect 8-pack. Arya gulped. This man's body is incredible. Looking closer, she realized it was her 5th mate, Ronan. His true form, she remembered, was a nether shadow wolf, the only species considered rare in the tribe. As if sensing something, the man snapped his head up, his gaze as sharp as a newly unsheathed sword. Arya flinched quickly, averting her eyes. She turned to run, but in the next second, she froze. The man had called her name, his voice cold and laced with a grinding anger. "Arya, you have the audacity to spy on me while I'm bathing." As he spoke, the man rose from the river and strode toward her. Without a second thought, Arya bolted. "Are you kidding me? If I don't run now, when will I?" In the original story, the original owner had been caught spying on Ronan while he was bathing and was beaten nearly to death. She had no desire to experience that. In her mind, she cursed Ronan 1,000 times over. This man is so petty. He comes out to the river to bathe in the open and then blames me for looking. I was looking openly and honestly. Thank you very much. Of course, as she fled, she didn't forget to grab her face wash. If she lost that, there was nowhere she could buy another one. Ronan saw her snatch something as she ran and wondered what it was. It was strange, something he had never seen before, but it looked quite exquisite and beautiful. He didn't pay it much mind, however. The thought that this female had dared to spy on him while he was bathing made his handsome face darken once more. The last time Arya spied on him, he had taught her a lesson. He couldn't believe she was doing it again. It seemed she had a short memory when it came to pain. Arya ran all the way back to her cave. Seeing that Ronan hadn't followed her, she let out a sigh of relief. She sat down by the fire, and thinking of Ronan's powerful physique, she couldn't help but swallow again. She had to admit the man's body was truly spectacular, the best she had seen since arriving in the Beastman world. His looks were also handsome, with a rugged, aggressive kind of beauty. A man like that was so perfect it was almost infuriating. It was just a pity that he despised her to the extreme, making the difficulty of conquering him incredibly high. Arya sighed. She felt it was best to just wash up and go to sleep. Just as she was about to climb onto the stone bed to sleep, the system's voice suddenly sounded in her head. Ding. The favorability of the host's target characters has changed. Would you like to view it now? Hearing the system's voice, she froze for a moment, then quickly reacted. Yes, she said hurriedly. She wanted to see what had changed. The next second, a virtual control panel appeared in front of her. Luna looked at the changed numbers on it, her eyes wide with astonishment. She remembered her charm was originally 0. Now it was 10. 10 points of charm was still garbage, but at least she had some now. She was no longer a complete eyesore. Although she didn't know how it had increased, it was probably related to her performance in the cave. Her appearance had also increased by 10 points from 10 to 20, which was likely related to her bathing and detoxifying. The favorability of her 5 beastman mates had also all changed. She remembered KL's favorability was originally -100, a maxed-out dislike. Now it was -90. Luna found it strange. She had drugged him and kicked him, yet his favorability had increased. Did that jerk, KL, have some kind of masochistic tendency? And Silas. His favorability was originally -90, and now it was -80. She never would have guessed that her running away could increase his favorability towards her. She shook her head. She could only say that men were truly a difficult species to understand. The favorability of her other 2 mates had also increased. She didn't know how, but it was certainly related to her actions. Although they were all still negative numbers, it was a good start. She glanced at the system panel and then closed it. Silas was heading back to his own cave when halfway there he saw a firelight coming from Luna's cave. For some reason he changed direction and walked towards it. As he approached, he saw a large pile of various animal skins at the entrance, all dirty and smelly. Some were even moldy, clearly unwashed and undried. Silas frowned deeply. These skins were all the result of the 5 of them hunting hard, and Luna had just ruined them like this. What a waste of good things. A cold glint flashed in his eyes, and he strode into the cave, clearly intending to teach her a lesson. But when he entered, the scene inside stunned him. The entire cave was empty except for a few pieces of roasted meat and fish wrapped in large leaves along with 8 bird eggs. There was nothing else. The cave was very clean and tidy, no longer the garbage dump it had been before. It had obviously been cleaned up. In the middle of the cave, a fire was burning brightly. Luna was hugging her knees, sitting by the fire, her body curled up, her head resting against the stone wall, fast asleep. She looked pitiful. Silas sneered inwardly. Pitiful, but she deserves it. She ruined so many good animal skins just like that. She deserves to freeze to death. He was about to turn and leave, but his eyes lingered on Luna's ugly face. His steps faltered. For some reason, he always felt that there was something different about her. He couldn't pinpoint what it was, but he just felt that her face didn't seem so ugly anymore. Silas was frightened by his own thought. He felt he was going crazy to think this ugly hag wasn't ugly. He must be insane. But it was true that she had become clean and tidy. Silas's eyes fell again on the pieces of roasted meat and fish wrapped in leaves. He had thought Luna had already eaten all this meat, but she hadn't touched a single bite and had even saved it. Was she really planning to lose weight? Could she resist? Silas raised an eyebrow, a little skeptical. He didn't know how long she could keep it up. These pieces of meat would probably be gone by tomorrow morning. In her sleep, Luna vaguely felt someone in front of her. She opened her eyes and saw Silas, who had appeared in the cave at some point, looking at her with a strange expression. Luna was startled, thinking this man had followed her to teach her a lesson. Her sleepiness instantly vanished. She sat up straight, scooting her bottom back to put some distance between them. Her eyes fell on his face, and she explained with a forced smile. Well, I really didn't mean to peek at you bathing. I just happened to be going to the river to wash my face. I had no idea you were there." Although she really hadn't meant to, even she didn't believe this excuse. It was all because the original Luna had a history of doing all sorts of shameless things. Seeing Silas's face gradually darken, her voice grew smaller and smaller until it finally trailed off completely. He stared at her, his expression unreadable, and she didn't know if he believed her or not. Fortunately, he didn't raise a hand to teach her a lesson. He just said grimly, "You'd better not," and then turned and left the cave. Watching the man's retreating back, Luna sighed in relief and muttered, "Damn man." She closed her eyes, yawned, and leaned back against the stone wall, preparing to go back to sleep. The next morning, she checked her favorability again. She quickly scanned the numbers. Only Silas's data had changed. She remembered it was -80 last night, but after one night it had become -60, a full 20-point increase in favorability. She smiled in an extremely good mood. Silas must have seen the changes in the cave when he came last night. Who would like a messy, dirty woman? Being clean and tidy always made a good impression. She closed the system panel and took all the unwashed animal skins that had been piled at the entrance last night to the river to wash. It was still early, but there were already quite a few beastmen busy at the river. When they saw her, they all looked at her with strange expressions, then whispered to each other, "Isn't that Luna? Why is she up so early? Look, she's carrying so many animal skins. Is she planning to wash them? With her lazy personality, she's washing her own skins. Isn't she just putting on a show? Ha ha! She's the laziest female in our entire wolf tribe. Hoping she'll wash hides is harder than hoping the sun will rise in the west. That's right. I bet she's just going to throw them away and then go demand new ones from Kale and the others." These whispers, though quiet, reached Arya's ears without missing a single word. She inwardly scoffed, but paid these females no mind. The original owner's reputation was already in tatters. She couldn't possibly repair it overnight. She found a secluded spot and began to wash the hides. Soon the whispers started up again. "Oh my God, Arya is actually washing the hides, and so many of them. Am I dreaming? Since when did she become so hardworking? The sun really must be rising in the west. Has anyone noticed she's changed? She doesn't seem so ugly anymore. It's true she doesn't look so messy. These comments reached Arya's ears and she felt a sense of helplessness. The original owner's image was truly ingrained in everyone's minds. Changing their perception was clearly not going to be an easy task. She ignored the chatter and focused on washing the hides. Without soap or detergent, she couldn't get them perfectly clean. She could only scrub them with all her might, rubbing until her hands were raw and red. By the time she had finished with all the hides, an hour had passed. She was so tired her back ached. Her knees were sore and her arms were completely worn out. Sweat poured down her face as if she'd been in a rainstorm. She washed her face and stretched her limbs, which made her feel a little better. Just as she was about to gather the clean hides, a female walked up to her with a smirk, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Arya, have you had a change of heart? You actually know how to do proper work now." Arya looked at the female. She was young and pretty, no older than 17 or 18, with a hint of arrogance and disdain in her eyes as if she looked down on her. Searching the original owner's memories, she found that this female was named Maya Lyra's younger sister. Like her sister, she utterly despised the original owner. The reason was simple. Maya also had a crush on Kael and had once confessed her feelings to him only to be rejected. The rejection had been a huge blow to Maya, and she had been heartbroken. Since then, she had harbored a grudge against the original owner. Even though she knew Kael disliked the original owner, even found her repulsive, Maya still couldn't stand her. Arya withdrew her gaze, her expression cool. "It's none of your business," she said flatly. With that, she gathered the clean hides and left. Maya watched her retreating back, grinding her teeth in anger and cursing under her breath. "Who does she think she is?" Arya carried the hides back. As she passed through the tribe square, she noticed a large crowd of beastmen had gathered a dense mass of at least 100 of them. Her father, Torin, was also there, standing at the very front, giving instructions to the assembled beastmen. Listening closely, she realized it was just the usual safety precautions for the day's hunt. They were clearly preparing to go out hunting. An idea sparked in Arya's mind. She walked over with the hides. Torin saw her immediately, his brows furrowing as his face darkened. "What are you doing here?" he snapped. "Get back to your cave." This daughter of his was truly a disgrace. Lazy, gluttonous, with a terrible personality and completely boy-crazy, yet she herself was incredibly ugly. She was a constant source of embarrassment for him. Torin couldn't understand it. He and his wife were both good-looking, and their son Marcus was handsome as well. How could they have produced such an ugly daughter? But he never doubted that Arya was his child, because her eyes were the spitting image of his. And it was precisely because she was his child that he felt such anger. Arya saw the disgust in Torin's eyes and was at a loss for words. Just how much did he despise the original owner? She pouted, but ignored his disdainful look and spoke her mind. "Father, I want to go hunting with everyone too." In the original story, the heroine Chloe was brought back to the wolf tribe by Kael during this very hunt. Although Chloe had already appeared yesterday and Arya had left her far away, she would never underestimate the power of the heroine's halo. There was no telling how she might run into Kael and get brought back to the tribe. She had to go and keep an eye on things herself. Besides, she couldn't stand eating roasted meat and fish every day. She desperately needed to improve her diet. Torin thought he had misheard her. He stared at her in astonishment. "What did you say?" Arya repeated herself. "I said I want to go hunting with everyone too." Her words were followed by a moment of dead silence. Then a massive roar of laughter erupted across the square. "Ha ha ha! Did you all hear that Arya said she wants to go hunting? That's hilarious. A lazy, gluttonous female like her wants to go hunting with..." The beastman stopped himself from saying Arya had a screw loose. He glanced at the chief at the front and swallowed the rest of his words. No matter how much the chief disliked Arya, she was still his daughter. Saying such things would surely displease him. I bet she just wants to use this as an excuse to get close to her mates. Ha ha ha. The other beastmen also made sarcastic remarks, but out of respect for the chief, they didn't go too far. Still, their words were not pleasant to hear. Her mates also frowned at her, their thoughts no different from everyone else's. They all assumed she was just trying to get close to them, and their faces were filled with disgust. Arya ignored everyone's ridicule and her mate's disdainful looks. She just looked calmly at Torin. "Father, don't worry. I won't slow everyone down. I've awakened a wood elemental ability. I can protect myself." As she finished speaking, she placed the hides she was holding on a large rock in the square. She held out her right hand palm up and channeled the elemental energy in her body. A moment later, a small, vibrant green vine appeared in her palm, right before the eyes of all the assembled beastmen. This world had elemental abilities. For example, Kale, whose true form was a silver moon frost wolf, could control ice. The beastmen in the tribe could of course freely transform between their beast and human forms. Females, however, could not, nor did they have any innate elemental talents. Now, Arya was telling everyone she had awakened an ability. One can imagine the shock that rippled through the crowd. The mocking laughter in the square died down instantly. All the beastmen stared wide-eyed and in disbelief at the small green vine in her palm, a female who could awaken an ability. This was something unheard of, unseen. Torin was also stunned. He stared at the small vine in Arya's palm, speechless for a long moment. In all his years, he had never seen a female awaken an ability. Not just him, but none of the beastmen present had ever seen such a thing. If it were before, they would have scoffed and refused to believe it. But now the proof was right before their eyes, leaving them no choice but to believe. Arya saw everyone's shocked expressions and felt a thrill of satisfaction, but she kept her face calm. She even channeled her ability to make the vine in her palm grow a little longer, wrapping it around her finger, making it look incredibly nimble. This time, the way everyone looked at her was different. There was curiosity, wonder, and even envy. Her mates looked at the vibrant green vine in her palm, and the disgust on their faces faded, replaced by a flicker of astonishment. This female, she really seemed to have changed. Torin finally came to his senses. He looked at her with a complex expression and asked in a deep voice, "Is this really an ability you've awakened?" Arya nodded. "Yes." Torin raised an eyebrow. "When did you awaken it?" "Yesterday." Arya answered truthfully without hiding anything. After all, this ability had come with her from the apocalypse. She wasn't afraid of anyone investigating. Torin stared at her, his thoughts unreadable, but he didn't ask any more questions. He turned to the assembled beastmen and announced loudly, "Since Arya has awakened an ability and wants to go hunting, then let her go. You all remember to look after her and don't let her get hurt." If his daughter had awakened an ability, he certainly wasn't going to stop her. A female in the tribe awakening an ability was a major event. Who knew, maybe one day his daughter could lead the tribe to new heights. At that thought, Torin's gaze on Arya softened considerably, and there was even a hint of joy in his eyes. Seeing that she could go, Arya quickly spread the clean hides she had washed on the large rock nearby to dry. When the rock ran out of space, she spread them on the grass. The beastmen present all saw her actions, their faces filled with astonishment. The famously lazy female of the tribe was actually washing hides herself. Had she really had a change of heart? Torin's face was filled with delight. This daughter of mine is finally not so detestable anymore. Look, she knows how to work. Who would dare call my daughter lazy? Now Arya ignored the dumbfounded looks of the beastmen around her and focused on spreading out the hides. By the time she was done, the beastmen gathered in the square had all transformed into their true forms. It was a sea of wolves of all different colors. Arya's eyes swept over them. There were at least 100 of them. Her father, Torin, had also transformed into a massive gray wolf, majestic and powerful. His body was a full size larger than all the other wolves present. His sharp, cold wolf eyes made it clear he was not to be trifled with. Torin walked up to Kael. The wolf's mouth opened and closed, speaking in a human voice. "Kael, I'm entrusting Arya to you. You take her with you." Without waiting for Kael's agreement, the wolf's head turned to look at Arya, the meaning unmistakable he wanted her to ride on Kael's back. Arya's mouth twitched, but she didn't refuse Torin's kind offer. Her gaze shifted to Kael. She saw that he had already transformed into his true form, a wolf with a full coat of silver fur, his body massive, twice the size of a normal wolf. His odd silver eyes were cold and sharp, yet incredibly captivating. She walked up to Kale, and before he could react, she nimbly scrambled onto the wolf's back and sat down. This wolf fur feels so nice, she thought. It was soft and smooth, and she felt very secure with no fear of falling off. Kale was stunned. He turned his head to look at her, his eyes dark and simmering with a barely suppressed violence. He actually let this ugly female sit on him. He must be insane. Kale desperately wanted to throw the ugly female off, but remembering it was the chief's order, he forced himself to endure it. Fine. I'll just treat her as an extra piece of luggage. Once we're in the forest, I'll just dump her somewhere. The pack of wolves leaped forward, charging into the deep forest with incredible speed, vanishing in an instant. Lyra was nearby. She watched the group leave, her eyes locked on Arya's disappearing back, filled with seething jealousy. That ugly, lazy, mean female actually awakened an ability, and the chief even took her hunting. And now she's even riding on Kale's back. She deserves to die. Lyra ground her teeth, her heart exploding with rage. Her eyes, as dark as a venomous snake's, stared fixedly in the direction Arya had disappeared. Meanwhile, Arya sat on Kale's back, feeling the jolt of the wolf's run. She felt no fear. On the contrary, the feeling of rushing through the air was exhilarating and liberating. The world before her seemed strange and magical. She gently stroked Kale's fur. She had to admit it felt incredibly comfortable, soft and silky, better than any fur blanket she had ever used. She loved it so much she couldn't let go. Kale felt the touch on his back, and his body tensed again, almost throwing her off. He turned his head, his cold, silver wolf eyes glaring at her with a savage look as if warning her. Arya's mouth twitched, and she was at a loss for words. This damn man. She had only touched his fur a little. Did he have to be so repulsed? And he was even glaring at her. She pouted and finally stopped stroking him, instead gripping the fur on his back tightly with both hands to keep from falling. Seeing that the ugly female on his back had finally settled down and stopped touching him, the cold, savage look in Kale's eyes softened. Draven had transformed into a giant black python over 10 meters long. His massive body and cold, slitted eyes were incredibly terrifying. He looked at the scene ahead, his eyes glinting with an unreadable thought. He suddenly slithered up next to Arya and then coiled his body, trapping her in the middle. Help me!" Suddenly being wrapped by a giant python, Arya screamed in terror, instinctively clutching Kale's neck. Her voice was loud, and being so close to Kale's back, the scream shot directly into his wolf ears, making them ring. His face darkened, and the fur all over his body stood on end. The savage look returned to his wolf eyes, and he almost couldn't stop himself from flinging her off. This damn ugly female. Can't she just be quiet for a minute? Arya also realized she had overreacted. Clinging to Kale's neck was basically like plastering her entire body onto him. She sheepishly let go and switched to gripping the fur on his back, laughing awkwardly. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." Creatures like snakes were just impossible to like. The fear was bone deep. She couldn't be blamed. Draven was also taken aback by her reaction. A flicker of confusion passed through his slitted eyes. Am I that scary? Why haven't the other females been this afraid of me before? He stared at Arya for a long moment, then his body uncoiled slightly, shrinking down and wrapping himself around Kale's wolf body instead. He stuck his snake head out, his cold, slitted eyes fixed on her as if observing her. Arya felt her scalp tingle and a wave of discomfort wash over her entire body. She could only try to ignore his gaze. Draven's true form was truly terrifying. She didn't know when she would ever get used to it. Kale was also annoyed by Draven's actions. He couldn't help but say in a cold voice, "Draven, let go now." This damn Draven. What is he doing coiling around me? If it weren't so inconvenient right now, I'd definitely give this black snake a piece of my mind. Draven ignored him, still wrapped around Kale's wolf body, treating him as if he were thin air. His cold, slitted eyes remained on Arya, as if he were curious why she was so afraid of him. Seeing that he was being ignored, Kale's wolf face turned black, and the fur all over his body stood on end, a sign that he was about to lose his temper. This damn black snake, fearing a fight would break out. Arya quickly spoke up. Draven, can you let Kale go? You're wrapped around him like that he can't walk." Hearing this, Draven's cold snake eyes finally shifted to Kale. He saw that the other's wolf face was indeed not looking good, his silver eyes dark and grim. A glint flickered in his eyes, and he uncoiled from Kale, returning to his original size and slithering alongside them. It took over an hour to reach the Tagan forest. The trees in the Tagan forest were tall and dense, blocking out the sky. The forest was incredibly quiet, with only the occasional sound of insects and birds, which made it seem a bit eerie. But for the beastmen, this place was their paradise. Arya sat on Kael's back, her eyes curiously observing her surroundings filled with wonder. This was her first time in the Tagan forest. Even the original owner had never been here, at most just wandering around the vicinity of the tribe. Yesterday, she had left Chloe in the Silver Pine Forest to the southwest of the tribe, not here. She probably wouldn't run into Chloe, but she didn't let her guard down. "System Sis, can I call you that?" she asked the system in her mind. "Yes." The system's voice quickly responded in her head. "What is it, host?" "Chloe, the transmigrator from yesterday. I secretly left her in the forest. What's her situation now?" she asked. The heroine, though, from the modern world and without any self-defense abilities, had the heroine's halo and would surely be fine. Sure enough, the system replied shortly after. "Reporting to host, after you left Chloe in the Silver Pine Forest, she did indeed encounter some danger. But she happened to run into a 5th-tier beastman Zane from the Winged Tiger tribe and was rescued at the last minute. She has now been taken back to the Winged Tiger tribe and is currently in Zane's cave." "Of course." Arya pouted. She remembered that Zane seemed to be male lead number 6. His true form was a winged tiger. He would later become one of Chloe's mates. Due to her interference, the two of them had met early. Knowing that Chloe had already reached the Winged Tiger tribe, she didn't care anymore. In short, she wouldn't be running into her anytime soon, and Chloe wouldn't be easily popping up in front of her to be an eyesore. "System Sis, can you check if there are any other transmigrators or reborn individuals besides me and Chloe?" She thought of something and asked again. If she and Chloe could transmigrate to this world, then others naturally could too. The system feels the host is very cautious. As expected of the host, I chose. The system scanned the world and then said, "Besides the host and Chloe, no other transmigrators have been detected at present. However, there is one reborn individual, a female named Elara from the Winged Tiger tribe." "Elara?" Arya murmured the name, sounding vaguely familiar. After a moment of thought, she remembered she was another villainess in the story. Elara was the most beautiful female in the Winged Tiger tribe, and had been in love with Zane since childhood, always wanting to be his mate. Zane was male lead number 6, so of course he was handsome and incredibly powerful. It was perfectly normal for Elara to be in love with him. Unfortunately, Zane didn't like Elara. Later, when he met the transmigrated Chloe, he fell in love with her at first sight. To become Chloe's mate, he had a period of fighting tooth and nail with Kale, Draven, Finn, Asher, and Ronan. In the end, Chloe stopped them, her eyes brimming with tears, crying, "Don't fight over me anymore. I'm not worth it. I love all of you." In short, she ended up with all of them. Later, she seemed to have collected a few more, and by the end of the story, she had practically formed a male harem and lived a happy and fulfilling life with them. Elara was another villainess, and of course her end was tragic, just like the original owners. They were a pair of star-crossed sisters in a way. Now that Elara was reborn, she probably wouldn't be in love with Zane anymore. After all, her previous life was so miserable. If she were still in love with Zane after being reborn, she would have to have a screw loose. But no matter what, she would surely seek revenge on Chloe. But this had nothing to do with her. It was good to know, but she didn't ask any more questions. Kale carried her deep into the Tagan forest. After walking for a while longer, he finally stopped. His eyes glinted, and he decided to transform back into his human form without giving Arya any warning. Seeing that she was about to be thrown off, she startled and cursed inwardly. This damn man. Not even a word of warning. Just as he was about to transform, she quickly jumped off, landing steadily on the ground. Kale saw her action, raised an eyebrow in surprise. Then his expression returned to one of disgust. "Stay put," he said coldly. If you die, it's not my responsibility." Without waiting for her reply, he transformed back into a wolf and quickly vanished, obviously off to hunt. Arya didn't mind his attitude. She just looked around and realized that besides her, there were no other beastmen. She was a little stunned. "So they just left me here alone? Didn't my father tell Kale to take me with him? What kind of taking me with him? Is this just leaving me here by myself?" Her face darkened slightly. Staying put was out of the question. She had come along to find resources. How could she do that by staying in one place? But she didn't just wander off. First, she found some soft but sturdy vines nearby and sat down under a large tree to start weaving a basket. With a basket, it would be much easier to carry things. The Beastman world was incredibly rich in resources. The mountains were full of good things, and she couldn't go without something to carry them in. In her previous life, she had watched wilderness survival shows and had seen others weave baskets. She knew the method, but she had never done it herself. Now she had no choice but to try. Fortunately, her hands were quite dexterous. After some fumbling, she got the hang of it, and her movements became faster and faster. Before long, she had finished weaving a basket. It wasn't very pretty, but it was basket-shaped with a sturdy bottom, perfectly capable of holding things. Arya looked at the finished basket with a hint of satisfaction. She slung it on her back and started searching for resources. Tegan was rich in resources with all kinds of wild fruits everywhere. It was summer and the mountains were covered in fruit large and sweet. She hadn't walked far before she had picked more than half a basket, which was heavy. Fortunately, the basket was sturdy. She didn't dare pick too many wild bananas. They spoiled easily and were hard to store. She picked a lot of hawthorn, though. If she couldn't eat it all, she could make jam, which would be a great snack in the winter. She also found 2 chestnut trees. The trees were tall and large, covered in chestnuts, many of which had already split open. Chestnuts were a good staple, a type of coarse grain. Though small, they were very filling. They could be eaten raw, roasted, or boiled. She picked up the spiky chestnuts that had fallen to the ground and put them in her basket. Then she found a long, thin branch and carefully climbed the tree. It took a lot of effort. This body was too fat, making climbing difficult. She stood on the main trunk as it was the thickest. She didn't dare stand on the other branches, afraid of breaking them and falling. She held on to the trunk with one hand and used the stick in the other to hit the clusters of spiky chestnuts. Thump, thump, thump. The chestnuts fell from the tree. Before long, the ground was covered in them, at least several dozen pounds worth. She was engrossed in her work when a voice suddenly came from behind her. "What are you doing?" Arya was nearly scared to death and almost fell from the tree. Fortunately, she managed to grab the trunk in time, avoiding a fatal fall. Her heart was still pounding as she looked behind her and saw Ronan, who had appeared at some point, looking at her with a strange expression as if he couldn't understand what she was doing with these things. Seeing it was Ronan, she breathed a sigh of relief and glared at him irritably. "Do you walk without making a sound? Don't you know you can scare a beast to death?" Ronan said. Nothing, just looked at her strangely. So fat, yet she managed to climb the tree. And as far as he knew, Arya was lazy and gluttonous, spending her days lying in her cave waiting for them to bring her food. Forget climbing a tree. It was hard to get her to even walk quickly. Now, not only was she not lazy, she was very hard-working. And she was brave too. Not only did she come hunting, but she also dared to climb a tree. Could it be that having an ability had caused this change? Arya saw him staring at her without a word and didn't mind. She carefully slid down the tree, then squatted on the ground to pick up the chestnuts, preparing to take them back and peel them later. Ronan stared at her and couldn't help but ask, "What are you getting those for? They're prickly and the nuts inside are small, not even enough for a mouthful." In the Beastman world, almost no one bothered with these. For one, they were prickly. For another, there was very little meat. It was more practical to just hunt for meat. Arya glanced at him. "Don't underestimate them. These are delicious, very filling and nutritious. They can also be stored for a long time, even through the winter." With that, she continued to pick them up. Before long, her basket was full. There were still a lot of chestnuts on the ground, but she had nowhere to put them. Fortunately, there were vines everywhere in the Beastman world. She pulled some from nearby and squatted on the ground to weave another basket. Ronan was surprised to hear that chestnuts could be stored for a long time. He didn't know where she had suddenly learned so much, but he didn't dwell on it. Seeing the basket gradually take shape in Arya's hands, he asked curiously, "What is that thing called? How do you know how to weave it?" Arya paused, then said casually, "It's called a basket used for carrying things. As for how to weave it, I just figured it out myself." She couldn't very well say she had learned it from watching TV in the apocalypse, so she just gave a vague answer. Ronan said nothing, just stared at her, his thoughts unreadable. She didn't mind, just focused on weaving her basket. This time, the basket she wove was much prettier than the first one, and she was faster too. "Ding Ronan's favorability has changed. Would you like to check it?" "Host." Just then, the system's voice sounded in her head. She paused, glanced at Ronan, but didn't check immediately. Instead, she asked in her mind, "What's his current favorability?" 40. The system answered succinctly. Arya was a little surprised. She remembered that when she woke up this morning, Ronan's favorability was 60. In less than a day, it had increased by 20 points. It must have something to do with her ability. A hard-working and capable female, no one would dislike that. The corners of her mouth curved up. She looked at Ronan again, her mood good. "Aren't you going to hunt?" The man had no prey with him. He either hadn't caught anything yet, or hadn't found any tracks. "You be careful." Ronan glanced at her, then just said that. A black light flashed around him, and in an instant he had transformed into a giant black wolf and leaped away, disappearing into the forest in the blink of an eye. She moved the 2 full baskets to the base of the tree, temporarily leaving them there to pick up later. In the Beastman world, no one would bother with these things. She wasn't afraid of them being stolen. It was still early, so she decided to wander around nearby. She slung the empty basket on her back and didn't walk far before she suddenly stopped. Her gaze fixed in one direction. "Is that wild ginger?" Not far away, there was a patch of plants that looked very much like wild ginger. They were growing well, with broad green leaves that were very pleasing to the eye, much larger than what she had seen in her previous life. The leaves were also slightly different. She quickly ran over, squatted down, and carefully examined them. They did indeed look very much like wild ginger, but she couldn't be sure. She found a sharp stone nearby and carefully dug away the soil. The ginger root was revealed. It wasn't growing very deep, and soon the entire root was unearthed. It was shaped a bit like a large human palm, thick and large, covered in mud, but it was undoubtedly wild ginger. She was incredibly excited. Ginger was a great thing. It could be used as a spice and to ward off the cold. Especially in the cold winter, a bowl of hot ginger soup would be wonderful. This patch of wild ginger had at least a few dozen plants, and each one was growing very large. Ginger didn't spoil easily, so it was fine to dig up a lot. Confirming it was wild ginger, she began to dig enthusiastically, putting what she dug up into her basket. The patch looked large, but when she actually started digging, there wasn't that much. She chose the well-developed plants and dug them all up, leaving the ones that weren't growing well or were still small to continue growing. By the time she had finished with the whole patch, she had dug up about 20 plants in total, enough to last her for a while. She was so tired she was drenched in sweat, even her back was soaked. The animal hide dress was hot and stuffy, sticking to her skin uncomfortably. Arya looked up at the sky. The sun was gradually rising. It was probably around 11 a.m. No wonder it was so hot. The sweat trickled over the pimples on her face, making them itch unbearably. She wanted to scratch, but looking at her muddy hands, her mouth twitched and she gave up. Her gaze fell on a small stream not far away, and she walked over. She squatted by the stream, washed her hands, then splashed water on her face. In an instant, she felt much more comfortable, and her face stopped itching. The clear water reflected a bumpy, pimple-covered face, incredibly ugly. She sighed inwardly. So ugly. Even I hate it. Arya remembered she hadn't used her ability to detoxify her skin today. It didn't take any effort anyway. Her palm, facing up a vine, shot out, growing rapidly and crawling up her face. The green leaves on the vine glowed with a faint green light, covering her entire face and beginning the detoxification process. She was engrossed in the process and didn't notice her surroundings. Just then, a wolf with green fur and a tall, strong body poked its head out from the bushes. It was Asher who was hunting nearby. He had originally come here for a drink of water, but he happened to see Arya. He saw the vine coming out of her palm and knew it was the ability she had awakened yesterday, clearly a wood elemental one. He saw the vine crawl up her face, glowing with a faint green light, and he didn't know what it was for. A flicker of doubt passed through Asher's wolf eyes, but he didn't reveal himself, just hid in the shadows and watched. Before long, he saw black, dirty things start to appear on Arya's face, a thick layer covering her entire face. Even her eyes and nostrils were blocked. From a distance, he could smell a foul stench that made him feel nauseous. A look of intense disgust appeared in his eyes. He watched Arya calmly retract the vine, then calmly wash the black, dirty things off her face. As she washed her face, Asher clearly saw that the pimples on her face seemed to be gone, leaving only faint dark spots. So this ugly hag is using her ability to heal her face. Could Arya's ability be healing? The tribe's shaman's ability was wood elemental, and its effect was also healing. But this didn't look quite the same. Asher looked at Arya's face. Though he disliked her, he had to admit that she looked much more pleasing to the eye now. At least she didn't look so disgusting anymore. Of course, she was still ugly. After all, she was so fat she looked dumb. Even if all the pimples on her face were gone, she was still an ugly hag. He didn't stay long. He took a couple of sips of water and then quietly left. Arya had no idea that Asher had been watching her from the shadows and had left despising her to death. After washing her face, she took a sip of water and finally felt less hot. She slung the basket on her back and continued to search for resources. She wasn't picky. She put anything she found that was useful or edible into her basket. Before long, she had almost half a basket full, mostly spices and wild vegetables. She also found quite a few medicinal herbs. The forest was incredibly rich in resources. Before long, her basket was full. Today, she had found a patch of wild cabbage. Each plant was huge. One was enough for her to eat for several days. She pulled them all up, filling 4 baskets with cabbage. She also dug up a lot of other wild vegetables like water celery, shepherd's purse, and fiddlehead ferns. And there were all kinds of mushrooms. Tegan didn't have much, but it had a lot of mushrooms, thick, large, juicy, and especially big. No one had ever picked them before, so many just rotted in the ground. It was such a waste. She picked 2 large baskets full, almost overflowing. You can't have too much of a good thing. It didn't matter if she couldn't eat it all. She could dry it and save it for the winter. After becoming a beast man, her strength was also much greater. She moved the baskets full of mushrooms to the base of the chestnut tree, placing them with the other baskets full of resources. She counted them and found there were 8 baskets in total, each one overflowing. This was all her harvest for the day. Though she was as tired as a dog and drenched in sweat, she was incredibly happy. Suddenly, her expression turned a little strange. Her stomach hurt slightly and she felt the urge to go. In her memory, the original owner hadn't had a bowel movement in over a week. She hadn't gone since she had transmigrated either. She hadn't felt anything before and had thought that even this function had been abandoned. Now she finally had to go. Of course she was happy. It seemed eating a lot of fruit was indeed beneficial. She quickly picked a few large leaves, found a spot with water to wash them, and then ducked into the nearby bushes to take care of business. Arya was squatting and doing her business, feeling quite content, when she heard a rustling sound in the bushes accompanied by a foul, fishy wind and a sense of danger. She instinctively turned her head, and what she saw sent her soul flying. A massive saber-toothed tiger had appeared behind her, at some point its bloody maw wide open, staring at her with a ferocious expression, clearly seeing her as prey. She was so scared her face turned pale. Without even wiping, she grabbed her animal hide dress and ran cursing inwardly as she fled. What kind of damn luck is this? I can't even take a crap without running into a saber-toothed tiger. Seeing her run, the saber-toothed tiger roared at the sky, then leaped forward quickly, giving chase. "Mommy, save me!" Arya screamed as she ran, glancing back to see the saber-toothed tiger hot on her heels, its face ferocious. Her heart pounded with fear. She knew she couldn't outrun the saber-toothed tiger, but she couldn't just stop and wait to die. Her ability was only at the first level. It was fine for simple detoxification or healing, but it couldn't be used for combat. She could only run for her life. The saber-toothed tiger was incredibly fast, closing the distance in an instant. Seeing it was about to catch her, she screamed in her mind, "System sis, save me!" The system's mouth twitched, its voice laced with sympathy, but it had no intention of interfering. "Host, just hold on a little longer. Male lead number 2 is nearby. He heard the commotion and is on his way. You won't die." "Draven's here. Where?" Arya's heart leaped with joy. As she ran, she looked around trying to spot Draven, but she couldn't see any sign of him, not even a snake. Instead, the saber-toothed tiger caught up, opened its bloody maw, and lunged. "Mommy, save me!" Her heart pounded with terror. To avoid being bitten to death, she quickly rolled into the bushes on the side. Unfortunately, she rolled down a slope. Arya lay on the ground, gasping for breath, feeling as if every bone in her body was about to break. She was in pain all over. After resting for a moment, she ignored her injuries, sat up and looked around trying to figure out where she was. Then she realized something was wrong. Where was her animal hide dress? She looked down and saw she was completely naked. Her dress was gone. Arya's face changed. She suddenly remembered that before she had rolled down the slope, the saber-toothed tiger's teeth had caught a corner of her dress and ripped it off. Her face darkened. Without a dress, was she supposed to go back naked? She couldn't walk around with nothing on. She didn't have an exhibitionist streak. Her eyes fell on some large leaves nearby, and an idea sparked. She quickly picked a few large leaves, chose the biggest ones, and used vines to weave a simple grass skirt. It was a bit crude, but at least it covered her body. Then she used her ability to heal herself. The bleeding from her cuts stopped, the wounds gradually closed, and the pain subsided. Only then did she stop. Then she started looking for a way back. Just then she heard the sound of fighting coming from the top of the slope. Arya's heart stirred. She guessed it was probably the saber-toothed tiger and Draven fighting. She carefully climbed up the slope, preparing to go and see what was happening. Though the slope was steep, it wasn't hard to climb. Soon she reached the top. She hid in the bushes. From a distance, she could see a giant black python with black scales wrapped around the saber-toothed tiger fighting it. The python was as thick as a water bucket and over 10 meters long. A faint black mist surrounded it, giving it a mysterious aura. The black mist seemed to be corrosive. Every time the saber-toothed tiger touched it, it would let out a pained cry, its fur and skin corroding. It was clearly Draven's ability. Arya hid in the bushes, watching the battle in the distance, her heart pounding with shock. Before long, the saber-toothed tiger was dead. Arya watched from afar, unable to help but click her tongue. Draven is indeed a peak 5th-tier beastman. Draven released the saber-toothed tiger. In the next second, a black light flashed around the giant python, and it quickly shrank, finally transforming into a tall, incredibly handsome beastman. His features were sharp and chiseled like a god from an ancient stone carving. Arya brushed the dirt off herself and came out from the bushes. She looked at the strangled saber-toothed tiger on the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. That saber-toothed tiger is finally dead. It made me have to hold it in halfway through and almost got me killed. Her gaze shifted to Draven, her expression filled with gratitude. "Thank you for saving me. If this man had come a little sooner, I wouldn't have had to roll down the slope." But in any case, he had saved her. A word of thanks was still necessary. Draven looked at her, saw the grass skirt she was wearing, and his mouth twitched. What is she wearing? A few leaves can't cover much. Her whole body was covered in layers of fat. It was truly unbearable to look at. It was worse than the animal hide dress. At least that covered things up. A flicker of disgust passed through his eyes. So ugly, he thought. But her skin seems a little whiter and not so rough. It's a little more pleasing to the eye. She finally looks a little like a female. But she's still ugly. Especially those buck teeth. They're so unsightly. I wish I could just pull them all out and give her a new set. Arya felt a little strange under his gaze, especially when he stared at her mouth with a look of disgust and a hint of danger. This damn man. Does he want to pull out my teeth? She knew her buck teeth were ugly, but she couldn't just have them pulled out. Forget about whether it would affect her eating. She probably wouldn't even be able to speak properly. She couldn't help but take a couple of steps back, covering her mouth and looking at him warily. "What do you want?" Seeing her on high alert, especially her wary eyes. Draven felt a wave of inexplicable anger. His face darkened, and he said with a hint of annoyance, "I don't want anything. I was just wondering if your buck teeth can be fixed. If they can, you should get them fixed soon. They're an eyesore." It was true, her teeth really ruined her looks. Even if her skin was whiter and her pimples were gone, her teeth were still an eyesore. And that fat body. He wished he could just use a bone knife to carve off all the excess fat. He hadn't realized he was paying more and more attention to Arya. Before he would have found even a second glance at her repulsive, let alone thinking about how to fix her teeth. Arya was surprised to hear that. "This damn man is actually concerned about my teeth. No, he's just disgusted." But her buck teeth were indeed very ugly. She wanted to get them fixed too, but this wasn't the apocalypse, nor was it Chloe's modern world with orthodontics and such. She could only hope that after her favorability increased, she would receive a reward from the system that would help her fix her teeth. "Of course they can be fixed. As long as you don't dislike me and treat me a little better, my teeth can be fixed." Draven was a little stunned, not quite understanding what she meant. If he doesn't dislike her and treats her a little better, her teeth can be fixed. What kind of nonsense is that? I don't understand a thing. But he didn't bother arguing with her about it. His gaze fell on her full of disgust, and he said sarcastically, "Hurry up and change. It's an eyesore. Or are you doing this on purpose to seduce me?" Arya was speechless at his words and couldn't help but roll her eyes. This damn man is so full of himself. Who would want to seduce him? My animal hide dress was ripped by the saber-toothed tiger. If I don't wear a grass skirt, do you want me to be naked? If you find it an eyesore, you can just not look, she said bluntly. After all, she was very comfortable and it was much cooler. Plus, she had covered all the necessary parts. Nothing inappropriate was showing. What was this man so disgusted about? He was so fussy. Hearing this, Draven's face darkened even more, and he became even more certain she was deliberately trying to seduce him. At that thought, another look of disgust flashed in his eyes, and he stopped paying attention to her. He transformed back into his true form, used his tail to wrap around the saber-toothed tiger, and left without even a word of goodbye to Arya, let alone caring about what would happen to her, or if she was safe. After all, the chief had only assigned her to Kyle, not him. Saving her just now was already a rare act of kindness. Draven left quickly, afraid that if he was a step too slow, Arya would cling to him and not let go. Seeing Draven leave without a word, just abandoning her there, Arya's face turned a little ugly. Then she pouted at the direction he had disappeared in and cursed under her breath, "Damn man," before turning to follow the path in her memory back to where she had left her baskets. She saw the 8 baskets lined up neatly at the base of the chestnut tree, each one overflowing. The corners of her mouth curved up into a happy smile. Today's harvest was not bad. When the beastmen from the tribe returned from their hunt, she could go back with them. With so many beastmen, there would surely be a way to transport all these resources back. She moved all 8 baskets to the spot where she and Kael had separated. She hadn't forgotten that the damn man had told her to stay put. Except for Finn, who was a little better, the other 4 mates were all damn men, especially Asher, who couldn't even be bothered to talk to her. The word disgust was practically written on his face. She sighed softly, feeling that the mission of conquest was still a long way off and not easy to complete. She shook her head, pushing these random thoughts out of her mind, and started moving her things. Each basket was full and heavy. It took her several trips back and forth, and she was so tired she was drenched in sweat and gasping for breath. But fortunately, she managed to move everything to the designated spot. Arya rested for a bit, ate 2 wild bananas, and then just sat under a tree and waited. It was still early. They hadn't returned from the hunt yet. She was thinking about whether she should wander around nearby to see if there was anything else when she saw a giant wolf with silver fur walking toward her from a distance. Its wolf eyes were fierce, and it was carrying a massive prey in its mouth, something that looked like a rhinoceros, but not quite. She didn't know what species it was, but it was huge, and there was probably a lot of meat on it. It was clearly returning from the hunt. Who else could it be but Kale? She was a little surprised, but had no intention of going over. She just sat under the tree. Kale was even more of a damn man than Draven, and disliked her even more. She didn't want to go over and humiliate herself. Even if he was her conquest target, she didn't want to keep trying to be friendly only to be met with a cold shoulder. Kale saw her sitting there obediently, not running around, and was a little surprised. Since when had Arya become so obedient? Seeing that she wasn't fawning all over him like usual, and wasn't saying any nauseating things. A flicker of surprise passed through his wolf eyes. It was better that she wasn't clinging to him. It saved him from being disgusted. "Don't you know this stuff is poisonous?" he said, pointing to the basket of mushrooms. Arya glanced at him and explained, "These mushrooms aren't poisonous. They're edible and they're delicious and nutritious." Kale clearly didn't believe her. He frowned. "Don't say I didn't warn you. If you eat it and die, it's not my responsibility." Seeing that he didn't believe her, she didn't bother explaining further. She'd show him later whether it was poisonous or not. "By the way, do you know where I can find a stone pot, the kind that's hollow in the middle with a concave bottom, but the inside has to be smooth?" A stone pot, though slow to heat up, would work. Kale clearly didn't understand. He frowned at her. "A stone pot? What's that?" Arya patiently explained, trying to use simpler terms. This time, Kale finally understood a little. "You mean something like pottery for cooking food but made of stone?" "Yes." Arya nodded, thinking to herself, "So this Kale can be smart for once." Kale said nothing, frowning in thought. "Over at Rocky Mountain, there are a lot of strangely shaped rocks. You might be able to find what you're looking for there." "Rocky Mountain?" Her eyes lit up. She stood up and quickly walked over to him, eagerly asking, "Is it far from here?" Kale saw her suddenly approach her large face, no smaller than a chopping board, right in front of him. He turned his head away in disgust and said coldly, "Not far. If you walk fast, it'll take about half an hour." Arya didn't miss the disgust in his eyes. Though she felt a little uncomfortable, she didn't let it bother her. She looked up at the sky and saw the sun was already starting to set. It was probably around 3 p.m. Half an hour was an hour. Going there and back would take 2 hours. If she went now, she'd be back around 5 p.m. It probably wouldn't be dark yet. She might be able to make it back to meet up with the beastmen from the tribe. She looked at Kale, pleading with him to take her to Rocky Mountain. Kale frowned at her and refused without a second thought. "No." His voice was cold and unwavering. She had expected him to refuse and wasn't too disappointed. "As long as you take me to Rocky Mountain and I find a stone pot, I can make you a delicious meal. I guarantee you've never had anything like it before." Kale narrowed his eyes and glanced at her, sneering. "No need. I wouldn't dare eat anything you make. You can't even roast meat properly. What kind of delicious food could you possibly make?" Hearing his sarcastic words, Arya felt a little embarrassed. That was the original owner who didn't know how to roast meat, not her. She wasn't taking the blame for that, but thinking about how the original owner really didn't know how to do anything but eat, she could understand why Kale didn't believe her. Arya gritted her teeth and decided to play her trump card. "Kale, don't forget Father told you to take me with you, but you left me here alone and went off to hunt by yourself." She paused deliberately, then continued, "I even ran into a saber-toothed tiger just now and almost got eaten. Luckily, Draven was nearby and saved me in time. If he hadn't come, I'd probably be in the saber-toothed tiger's stomach by now. What do you think Father will think if I tell him about this?" Even if it angered Kale, she didn't care. She needed a stone pot to make delicious food. Kale's face changed. He stared at her, his silver eyes sharp. "Are you threatening me?" Arya wasn't afraid. She met his gaze, her expression sincere. "How could that be a threat? I'm just telling the truth." Kyle pressed his thin lips together, his face ugly. He had indeed failed to carry out the chief's orders. But if he had taken Arya with him, how could he have hunted? She was a complete burden. It was her own fault for not listening and wandering off. She deserved to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. But he was still in the wrong. If Arya really told the chief, even if the chief disliked this daughter of his, he would probably still blame him. Kale stared at her. his eyes dark and cold. "So, what do you want?" Seeing his tone soften, Arya said happily. "As long as you take me to Rocky Mountain and I find a stone pot, I'll pretend this never happened. How about that?" Kale stared at her for a while as if weighing the pros and cons. A moment later he said coldly, "Fine, I'll take you." Seeing him agree, a bright, dazzling smile appeared on Arya's face. "Thank you, Kale." She knew she was ugly now, and her smile was probably even uglier, but she still wanted to smile. Kale looked at the smile on her face and just found it incredibly dazzling. He must have been insane to agree to take her to Rocky Mountain. The two of them didn't delay. Kale found a hidden cave nearby, dragged the prey inside, and camouflaged the entrance to prevent it from being eaten by other wild animals. Arya's 7 or 8 baskets were left in their original spot. Besides her, no other beastman would bother with them. Chloe, the transmigrator, and Alara, the reborn individual, weren't here either, so they couldn't possibly come and take them. But to prevent them from being destroyed by wild animals, she still made a simple protective barrier around them and covered the baskets with wild grass. "Are you done yet? You're so slow." Seeing her treat those messy things like treasure, Kale couldn't help but urge her on in a cold voice. With that, he transformed into a tall silver wolf, his silver eyes sharp and incredibly majestic, exuding Abba Dao and beautiful aura. Arya slung an empty basket on her back and climbed onto his back, sitting firmly. "Hold on tight. If you fall off and die, it's not my responsibility," Kale said coldly, then carried her and quickly rushed toward Rocky Mountain. She was really afraid this damn man would deliberately throw her off. She wanted to hug his neck, but thinking about how much he disliked her, she didn't dare. She just gripped the fur on his back tightly with both hands to keep from falling. The Silver Moon Frost Wolf's speed was very fast. Even with a person on its back, its speed didn't slow down at all. She didn't know if Kale was doing it on purpose, but he deliberately jolted her several times while running, almost causing her to fall off. Fortunately, she managed to grab his fur in time. Arya's face was a little ugly. This damn man. If he wasn't deliberately jolting her, she wouldn't believe it. She learned her lesson. Every time Kyle deliberately jolted her, she would hug his neck, her body almost clinging to him, disgusting him to no end. Kyle was indeed disgusted to the extreme, especially since this ugly hag was only wearing a grass skirt and her butt and his back were only separated by a few leaves. Every time he jolted, those 2 pieces of meat would press against his back. Because she was so fat, they sagged down and dangled in front of his stomach, disgusting him to no end. He got goosebumps all over and just wanted to throw this ugly hag off. But this ugly hag was like super glue sticking to him, and he couldn't shake her off. Kale's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He cursed this ugly hag several hundred times in his mind. His running speed couldn't help but slow down, and he didn't dare to deliberately jolt her anymore. He was truly disgusted to the point of being scared. Arya also noticed his speed had slowed down quite a bit and sneered inwardly. She knew he was disgusted by her. Serves this damn man right for always disliking me and jolting me. This is his retribution. But she also knew when to stop. She stopped hugging him and sat obediently. After all, he was her conquest target. She couldn't really piss him off. Seeing that she had stopped hugging him, Kale breathed a sigh of relief and ran properly. After an unknown amount of time, they arrived at the foot of a mountain. Arya got off him and looked at the large mountain in front of her. It was a tall, majestic mountain that stretched on and on with no end in sight. The mountain was covered in dense green trees interspersed with strangely shaped rocks. As she walked, she observed her surroundings. Most of them were various strangely shaped rocks. She even saw a few wild onions growing in a crack in the rock. She was delighted and quickly went over to pull them up. Wild onions could be used to remove fishy smells, and they were delicious stir-fried with vegetables or cooked in noodles. They could also be used as a spice. Kale saw her actions, and a flicker of doubt passed through his eyes. Why is she pulling up stinky grass for no reason? This stuff smells so strong, almost no beastman likes it. He wanted to ask her what she was doing, but he was too lazy to talk to her, and just held back his question. Arya didn't know what he was thinking. She put the wild onions in her hand into the basket on her back and started looking for a stone pot. and a stone mortar. A stone mortar could be used to grind wheat, soybeans, and other things. After looking for a long time, she finally found a suitable stone pot. It was like a concave trough, hollow in the middle with a concave bottom looking like a large pot. The inner wall was polished smooth-looking as if it had been man-made. This was truly a natural stone pot. Arya was ecstatic. With this large pot, she could cook food. Kael saw her silly smile and knew this was the stone pot she was looking for. Before long, she had found a stone mortar, a stone knife, and other tools. Then she smiled at Kael. Kael knew what she wanted. Before she could open her mouth, he directly refused. "So many things. Do you think I'm a donkey?" Arya was not surprised by his coldness and refusal. The smile on her face didn't change. Then she changed her strategy and said softly, "Kael, these rocks are really important to me. I need them to improve my life. As long as you help me carry them back, I can grant you one condition." Kael raised an eyebrow, his silver eyes looking at her in surprise. "Any condition?" His expression was half smiling, his voice laced with a hint of amusement. Arya tensed up, knowing this damn man Kael was not easy to deal with. She gritted her teeth and nodded. "As long as the condition isn't too outrageous, I can do it." "Anything," Kael sneered. "If you say so. I have two conditions. First, you have to lose 50 pounds in a month. Second, you are not allowed to deliberately disgust me like before. For example, clinging to me or doing other things that I find unbearable." Hearing his two conditions, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Fine, I agree." Arya thought for a moment, then nodded in agreement. Seeing her agree so readily, Kael was suspicious, wondering if she was up to something. But he wasn't afraid of her going back on her word. If she dared to go back on her word or couldn't do it, he'd see how he would deal with her. He stood up and walked over to the basket's stone pot and stone mortar. He looked at the overflowing baskets and the two large rocks, and his face darkened. Arya saw his dark face and began to explain her plan. She would find vines and weave them into a basket to put these things in for easy transport. Seeing that he didn't say anything, she took it as his acceptance of her proposal. She nimbly pulled some soft but sturdy vines from nearby. She plopped down on a rock and started weaving a basket. Her movements were skilled, and in less than a cup of tea's time, a sturdy basket was finished. Kael saw her actions, and a flicker of astonishment passed through his silver eyes. He had originally thought she had gotten these baskets from somewhere, but he hadn't expected her to have woven them herself. Forget the wolf tribe. Even the Beast King city didn't have this kind of thing. He was very curious how she knew how to weave these things. In his impression, Arya was lazy, gluttonous, mean, boy-crazy, and stupid. He didn't believe she could have thought of this kind of thing on her own. But he also did feel that she had changed. At least she wasn't so lazy anymore, not so messy, and a little smarter. The pimples on her face had also subsided, and her skin was a little whiter. But she was still ugly. "You don't seem like you were before," he suddenly said, his deep silver eyes looking at her probingly. Hearing this, Arya startled, her hands stopping. She looked at him and pretended to be calm. "How am I not the same?" She was a little nervous, afraid this damn man had seen something. But she wasn't the original owner. She couldn't live according to the original owner's personality. Kael's silver eyes were still deep, and he didn't answer her question. Then he started putting the things on his back. Arya saw this and quickly got on. Kael felt the weight on his back, his face a little ugly, but he didn't say anything. He leaped up and quickly left Rocky Mountain, rushing back to the meeting point in the Tagan Forest. About half an hour later, upon reaching the gathering point, she saw it was already crowded with beastmen who had clearly returned from the hunt. They were gathered together, seemingly waiting for the two of them to arrive. As soon as they reached the meeting spot, Luna was unceremoniously passed from Kael to Silas. About an hour later, she arrived back at the Wolf Tribe's camp. By now it was dark and campfires had been lit, illuminating the entire settlement. The young and old of the tribe were overjoyed to see the hunting party return, and they all crowded around. Luna patted the beastman beneath her. "Let me down." Silas heard her and lowered his body slightly. She hopped off his back, but the moment her feet touched the ground, she felt a cold gaze fall upon her. She frowned slightly and turned to see Mia's dark, sullen face. Luna curled her lip into a cold smirk, paid her no mind, and looked away. Seeing Luna look at her with such a dismissive attitude, Mia's expression grew so dark it seemed like it could drip venom. That ugly hag, she should take a look at herself. How dare she wear a grass skirt with that fat body trying to seduce Kale and the others? It's disgusting. She looked closer and realized the leaves covering Luna's backside were completely torn, revealing her round buttocks for all to see. Her face twisted in utter horror. Luna also sensed something was wrong. A cool breeze on her rear prompted her to reach back only to discover the leaves of her skirt were in tatters. Her face flushed crimson, and she hastily tried to cover herself, so embarrassed she wished the earth would swallow her whole. The grass skirt had been shredded by the bumpy ride, meaning she had essentially been riding bare-bottomed on Silas's back the entire way home. No wonder his back had felt so warm. The thought of riding bare on a handsome man's back made her so mortified she could have dug 3 bedrooms and a living room with her toes. This was a scene of pure social suicide. Right now, Luna just wanted to find a hole to crawl into. She glanced up at Silas and saw he was looking right at her, his dark eyes filled with a mix of teasing and obvious mockery. This man had clearly known her skirt was torn. Her face felt like it was about to bleed from blushing. Ignoring the strange looks from the other tribe members, she clutched her behind and ran for her life, hiding in her cave. The problem was her animal skin skirts were all left out on the tanning square. As she wondered how she was going to get them, a woman's voice came from the entrance of the cave. Luna quickly looked up and saw her original self's mother, Morgana. She was the original Luna's mother, but she utterly despised her ugly daughter, either beating or scolding her daily. The original Luna had been terrified of Morgana and would hide whenever she saw her. While the original Luna wasn't the most motivated person, that was no excuse for such abuse. "Mother, why are you here?" Luna asked, her expression calm as she watched Morgana enter. Morgana's eyes flashed with surprise as she looked at the face that was gradually becoming more refined. This ugly hag has suddenly gotten so clean. The boils on her face are gone too. But that buck-toothed smile was still ugly. It was hard to believe she had given birth to her. Morgana had often wondered if her baby had been swapped with some other females at birth. How else could she have produced such trash? Her eyes scanned the cave, noticing 7 or 8 baskets. She'd heard this debt collector of a daughter had woven them and had also brought back a pile of strange rocks and other junk. "I heard you awakened an ability," Morgana said, her eyes filled with probing curiosity. Luna met her gaze and nodded calmly. "I awakened it yesterday. It's a wood element, but it's very low level right now, so it's not very useful." Hearing it wasn't useful, Morgana pouted, not believing a word. Her gaze fell back on Luna's face. She didn't know how the boils and pus had disappeared, but she was sure it was related to her new ability. And she called that not very useful. This girl is truly a curse, Morgana thought. To awaken an ability such a huge event and not even tell me. I had to hear it from someone else. At this thought, her face darkened. "Did you anger Mia today?" she asked in a cold voice. Luna immediately understood the reason for her visit. She was here to condemn her. She was her actual daughter, yet she always sided with an outsider. "Who told you that mother?" Caught by her daughter's direct gaze, Morgana felt a flicker of guilt and blustered angrily. "It doesn't matter who told me, I'm just asking you if it's true or not." "It was Mia who told you, wasn't it?" Luna asked calmly. "Besides Mia, no one else would be so meddlesome." Morgana's expression faltered. "So what if it was?" she snapped. "Mia is more obedient and sensible than you, and she's prettier than you. If she's a swan, you're an ugly duckling. How can you even compare? You are not to provoke her." She didn't hesitate to belittle Luna. Though Luna was her daughter, no one knew that Mia was also her daughter, just not with Garrett. She had secretly given birth to Mia with another beast man in the tribe. Garrett was the wolf tribe's chief. Even with the scarcity of females, he would never share a mate. Morgana, naturally unwilling to have only one mate, had secretly had children with other beastmen behind Garrett's back. Mia was one of them. Garrett didn't know, the tribe didn't know, but Mia herself knew. Otherwise, she wouldn't constantly be tattling to Morgana. The original Beast World dating game didn't describe Morgana in much detail and never mentioned Mia's true parentage. Luna, unaware of the truth, just felt that Morgana treated Mia far too well and was now shamelessly siding with her. You believe whatever Mia says. She tells you I provoked her, and you come here to punish me. Mother, am I your daughter or is she? Why do you always side with an outsider? Luna genuinely couldn't understand how a mother could be like this. Faced with her daughter's clear eyes, Morgana guiltily looked away and snapped, "Stop talking nonsense. Mia is smart and reasonable. She wouldn't lie. If you think she's so great, then why don't you just adopt her as your daughter?" Luna said coldly. Morgana was choked by her words, her face ugly. She desperately wanted to say that Mia was her daughter, but if she said that, Garrett would be the first to tear her apart. She laughed in anger. "Don't you try to change the subject. I'm warning you from now on, you are not to bully Mia. If you do, I won't let you off." With that, she turned to leave, but her eyes caught sight of the baskets filled with strange things. She saw one basket was full of various mushrooms, and her expression changed. She looked at Luna in disbelief and fury. "You wasteful brat! Don't you know mushrooms are poisonous? Why did you bring so many back? Throw them out now." As she spoke, she reached out to knock the basket over. Luna's face instantly turned cold. She moved quickly to block her. "Stop! Who gave you permission to touch my things?" Her voice was icy with a hint of rage. She didn't even bother to explain that the mushrooms weren't poisonous. She knew Morgana wouldn't believe her anyway. Morgana's hand froze in midair. She glared at Luna. "How dare you speak to me like that?" Seeing her torn grass skirt, she pointed a finger at Luna's nose and scolded her. "Look at you! What kind of state are you in? A few leaves wrapped around you with your butt hanging out. You're a disgrace. Where are your animal skin skirts? Go change out of that thing now." "You don't need to worry about my affairs. I washed my skins and skirts this morning. They're still drying in the square. If you think I look so disgraceful, then go get them for me." Morgana's face twisted and she snorted coldly. Without another word, she turned and left. Luna watched her retreating back, her face a cold mask. The difference in Morgana's attitude towards her and Mia was just too vast. She strongly suspected Mia might be her daughter. The moment the thought appeared, she was startled. The more she thought about it, the more plausible it seemed. Otherwise, what mother would bully her own daughter while defending an outsider? It made no sense. System. What is the relationship between Mia and Morgana? Mia is the daughter of Morgana and the wolf tribe beastman Blaze. They also have another daughter named Maya, who is Mia's younger sister. Blaze's two daughters were both born from your mother. They have been having a secret affair for nearly 20 years. The system paused for a moment before continuing. Furthermore, Morgana also has children with beastmen from the leopard tribe, the berserker lion tribe, and the serpent tribe. Luna was stunned speechless by the system's revelation. This old woman was truly spreading her love everywhere and was incredibly fertile. Besides her and her brother, she had secretly given birth to 8 other children. No wonder she doted on Mia so much. And Maya was her daughter too. Suddenly, she felt a pang of sympathy for Garrett. His head was a lush green prairie. Does my nominal father know about this? He does not. Other than your mother, her 8 children, and her lovers, no one knows. But now you must be added to that list. Luna recalled that the gestation period for females in the beast world was typically 60 days or 2 months. With such a short time, it would be easy to hide away somewhere, give birth, and then reappear with a plausible excuse. It was perfectly normal for Garrett not to have noticed. She hesitated, wondering if she should tell Garrett. After all, he was the original Luna's father, and hiding this pricked at her conscience. After some thought, she decided against it. Without proof, Garrett wouldn't necessarily believe her based on her word alone. This was a matter between a husband and wife. As a daughter, it was better for her to stay out of it. Of course, if an opportunity arose later, she wouldn't mind dropping a hint for Garrett. Luna shook her head, clearing the chaotic thoughts from her mind. Morgana returned, carrying a pile of animal skins and several skin skirts. With a sour expression, she walked into the cave, threw the items on the stone bed, and grumbled, "You damn thing making me work for you. Hurry up and change out of that disgraceful grass skirt." With that, she turned and left. Luna glanced at the pile on the bed, raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She clapped her hands, stood up, and chose a skirt to change into. Then she walked out of the cave and headed for the tribe's central square, planning to get some bones for a stew. In the center of the square, a large bonfire blazed. The tribe members, young and old, were gathered in small groups, eating roasted meat and chatting. A few children were running and playing nearby, but when they saw her approach, they scattered in fear, as if she were a flood or a ferocious beast. She was about to pick out 2 suitable bones for her soup when she saw Asher walking leisurely towards her. He held a piece of roasted meat in his hand and looked at her gently. "Here, take this," he said softly. "Thank you." Luna glanced at the meat he offered, a smile playing on her lips, and didn't refuse. But just as she was about to take it, she heard Kale, who was sitting not far away, speak up. His eyes were fixed on them, and a half-smile was on his face as he looked at Luna mockingly. "I seem to recall someone promising me she'd lose 50 pounds in a month. If you eat a piece of meat that big, are you sure those rolls of fat on your body will ever go away?" Luna's hand froze, and the smile on her face faded slightly. That damn man. He was everywhere. She shot Kale a cool glance, but instead of bickering with him as she usually did, she turned to Asher with a wide, beaming smile and accepted the meat. "Thank you." Asher looked at her intently, nodded slightly, and without another word returned to his spot. Luna watched Asher's retreating back, then glanced at Kale. Deliberately, right in front of him, she took a huge theatrical bite of the meat. She chewed with exaggerated relish, swaying her head. Asher's cooking was amazing. The meat was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. It was truly delicious. The words had barely left her mouth when she felt an icy glare land on her. Luna didn't even need to look up to know who it was. Who else could it be but that jerk Kale, pretending not to notice? She took another massive bite of meat, eating until her mouth was slick with grease, making loud smacking sounds as she chewed. System, did that jerk's favorability score change? Yes, it increased by 5 points, bringing it to -85. Keep it up, host. Luna froze for a second, her gaze flicking over to Kyle, who was sitting alone, eating his roasted meat with a cold expression. She suddenly understood. This jerk was a classic case. The more you clung to him, the more he pushed you away. The more you ignored him, the angrier he got. And the more you defied him, the more attention he paid you. Luna's lips curled into a smirk. She decided she would make a point of provoking him more often in the future. Who knows, she might even be able to farm a wave of favorability points from it. In a dark corner of the square, untouched by the firelight, Ronan sat holding a piece of roasted meat, eating slowly and elegantly. His gaze fell upon Luna, and when he saw her deliberately provoking Kale, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. His mood seemed to have improved. She's getting more and more interesting. He glanced at the piece of saber-toothed tiger meat beside him and thought about giving it to her, but then he remembered Kale's earlier comment about her needing to lose 50 pounds in a month. He quietly dismissed the idea. Besides, she had already eaten Asher's meat. She wouldn't starve if he didn't give her any. Meanwhile, Jasper sat in the crowd watching Luna with a cold, disdainful look on his face. He had a cold and aloof personality and despised this kind of petty scheming, finding it utterly childish. He had no idea where she, with a body as fat as a sow's, got the confidence to think she could lose 50 pounds in a month. What a pipe dream. Luna walked over to a corner where there was a pile of various bones that the beastman had discarded, the meat stripped clean. She picked out 2 thigh bones that looked decent. Having no container, she could only hold them in her arms. She then noticed a good amount of animal organs on the ground, things no beastman wanted. Organs were good food, especially stir-fried intestines with chili and minced garlic, a truly delicious dish. She didn't have chili peppers now, but if she cleaned and stir-fried them, the taste probably wouldn't be too bad. It was a shame the beastmen in the tribe didn't know how to prepare them and considered them dirty, so they were all thrown away. She selected a few things that looked like wild boar organs and a set of intestines, planning to take them back to cook the next day. Her mood was good, and just as she was about to carry the bones and organs back, she heard a mocking voice from behind her. "Luna, what are you doing with that pile of bones and disgusting things? Don't tell me you're planning to eat them." Luna turned to see Mia, who had appeared out of nowhere, looking at her with a taunting expression. She glanced at her, knowing she was here to cause trouble. A cold glint appeared in her eyes, but she was too lazy to respond and simply turned to leave. Seeing her being ignored, Mia's face darkened. She quickly moved to block her path. "I'm talking to you. Didn't you hear me?" she snapped. Luna stopped and looked at Mia's furious face with a strange expression. "A good dog doesn't get in the way. Move." Mia was taken aback. She was a wolf female, not a hunting dog. Thinking of the hunting dog clan's terrible reputation for thievery and villainy hated by all beastmen, her face instantly turned pale. She pointed a trembling finger at Luna. "You ugly hag! You dare call me a hunting dog!" "In my heart, that's exactly what I'm calling you," Luna thought. "If you don't want to be a dog, then get out of my way." She would tolerate the male leads because they were her mission targets for the sake of their favorability scores. But who the hell was Mia? Did she really think Luna was a pushover made of clay? Mia had never been so humiliated. Enraged, she raised her hand to slap Luna across the face. "You wretched female! How dare you curse at me! I'll slap your mouth shut!" She wasn't afraid of the chief's punishment. Her mother Morgana would protect her. While she couldn't openly call Morgana mother, she did so often in private. Seeing the slap coming, Luna sneered inwardly. Before the hand could connect, a vine shot out from her palm. With a flick of her wrist, she whipped Mia, sending her flying to the ground nearby where she lay wincing in pain. Although Luna's wood element ability was only level 1 and lacked attack power that was against formidable wild beasts, whipping a weak, unskilled female like Mia was no difficult feat at all. All the beastmen present were shocked. Their eyes fell on the vine growing from Luna's palm. So this is the ability she awakened. It's clearly a wood element, but it can be used like that. Kale also looked at her in surprise. He knew she had awakened an ability but hadn't paid it much mind. Now, seeing her use a vine to whip Mia, he was intrigued. The other females in the square, however, were openly gloating. Mia was the most beautiful female in the tribe, but also the proudest and most arrogant, always looking down on them. Seeing her get put in her place by Luna was incredibly satisfying. Mia's 7 mates were also there. Seeing their female get whipped, their faces turned ugly. They rushed over to help her up, surrounding her with concern. "Mia, are you all right?" One of them, a handsome beastman, glared at Luna and said coldly, "Luna, Mia was just joking with you. For you to use your ability to whip her, wasn't that going too far?" Luna recognized him as Mia's third mate, Riker. She let out a cold laugh and retorted, "If I hadn't awakened my ability and that slap had landed, would any of you have stood up for me?" Riker and Mia's 6 other mates were struck speechless. As warriors of the tribe, they naturally understood the plight of those without strength. Seeing their silence, Luna sneered again. "If you wouldn't have stood up for me, then what right do you have to question me now? Mia hits me and I can't hit back. What kind of logic is that?" "Well said." Kale suddenly walked over, clapping his hands, a cold smile on his lips. He looked at the 7 mates surrounding Mia, his eyes filled with a mix of mockery and coldness. He curled his lip and said sarcastically, "The beast world is ruled by strength. If you're not skilled enough and get beaten, you deserve it. What face do you have to blame others?" Though he despised Luna, she was after all his nominal mate. Someone else bullying her was a slap in his face. Mia's 7 mates flushed with shame but couldn't refute him because Kale was speaking the truth. Luna stared at Kale, who had suddenly come out and even spoken up for her. She was stunned, and for a moment she thought the jerk actually looked a little handsome. What's wrong with me? Then she remembered his usual disgust for her, and her face fell. She was probably overthinking it. Mia, on the other hand, saw Kale defending Luna and was consumed by a mad jealousy, her eyes turning red. Everyone in the tribe knew she liked Kale, and Kale knew it too, yet he still defended Luna. "Luna, I will never let you get away with this. Just you wait." Kale saw Mia's twisted, jealous expression and frowned, a flicker of disgust in his eyes. What a waste of a pretty face. His gaze then fell on Luna, his silver eyes looking at her deeply. Luna felt strange under his stare. What does this jerk want? Does he think I embarrassed him and now he's going to teach me a lesson? Thinking this, she became guarded, watching him with a wary expression. Her cautious defensive look made Kale's face darken, a vein throbbing on his temple. He was furious. What does this damn fat woman mean by that? Is she afraid I'm going to hit her? He pressed his thin lips together, his expression cold as he stared at her. In the end, he didn't lose his temper and simply turned and walked away. Luna watched his retreating back and pouted, not understanding what that jerk was up to. But she could be sure of one thing: he didn't seem to despise her as much as before. Does he really like being abused? She retracted her vine, her expression thoughtful. Mia's 7 mates breathed a collective sigh of relief as Kale left. They began to persuade Mia to go back. Mia, her face pale, glared at her 7 mates but ultimately said nothing more and turned to leave. She was afraid that if she stayed any longer she would lose control and try to tear Luna to shreds, which would only make Kale despise her more. From the crowd, Maya watched her sister Mia's retreating back with a mocking expression. Her proud, self-righteous sister finally had a day where she was utterly humiliated. How satisfying. Luna ignored the various looks from the crowd and was about to take her bones and organs back when she remembered she had no salt and hadn't built a stove yet. She stopped and walked towards Asher. Asher saw her suddenly approach and looked at her calmly. "What is it?" Luna, holding the bones and animal organs, smiled sweetly. Asher, do you have any salt? Could you give me some? I can trade you for it. Also, if you're free, could you help me build a stove?" Asher glanced at the bones, organs, and intestines in her arms, frowning slightly. He had no idea what she wanted with things the other beastmen threw away, but he didn't ask. He just said calmly, "I can give you some salt, you don't need to trade anything for it. But what is this stove you're talking about?" "A stove is for making a fire to cook. It can concentrate the heat and make cooking more convenient. I'll explain how to build it when the time comes." Asher seemed to understand a little. He looked into her clear eyes and nodded slightly. "All right." Luna was thrilled that he had agreed. Asher was indeed much easier to deal with than her other 4 mates. After getting the salt and thanking him happily, Luna returned to her cave. On the way back, Jasper, seeing Kale walking ahead, thought about how he had defended Luna earlier. He quickly caught up to him and asked with a frown, "Why did you speak up for that ugly hag tonight?" Not far away, Ronan and Silas also perked up their ears, clearly curious about the answer. Kale stopped his silver eyes, looking at Jasper with a calm expression. "What? Can't I speak up for her?" Jasper glanced at him and chuckled. "Don't you hate her the most? Not just dislike, but utterly despise. You hate her more than the 4 of us combined. Every time you see that ugly hag, you look like you've seen a pile of dung and wish you could be miles away." Kale raised an eyelid, glancing at him with an indifferent attitude. "Just because I hate her doesn't mean I can't speak up for her, does it?" Jasper frowned slightly, a hint of displeasure in his emerald green eyes. "That's not what I mean. I just feel you were a bit unusual today." "He is a bit unusual. This isn't like you," Silas added, striding over. Kale glanced at them. "She's our female after all. If we let Mia's mates bully her, we're the ones who lose face." In truth, he himself didn't know why he had helped Luna today. It was as if he'd been possessed. Even he couldn't believe it. "That's true. No matter how much we hate Luna, she is our mate. That's an unchangeable fact. If we let other beastmen bully her, it wouldn't be good for our reputation. Besides, the chief would have something to say about it." Ronan, being a man of few words, just grunted in agreement and said nothing more. Jasper remembered seeing Luna use her ability to heal her face in the forest and spoke up. Speaking of which, Luna awakened a wood element ability. The tribe's healer is also a wood element. Do you guys think her ability could be a healing type? Healing abilities were incredibly precious, especially in the beast world where injuries and bloodshed were common. Kale raised an eyebrow, a half smile on his face. "What are you hoping her ability is a healing type?" Jasper rolled his eyes in annoyance. "It's not about what I hope for. I saw her use her ability to heal her face in the Tegan forest. The boils on her face were cured by her ability. It discharged a lot of black, filthy stuff. It was disgusting enough to make me sick." Kale, Ronan, and Silas were all slightly stunned. They had noticed early on that Luna's face had become much more refined, but they didn't know the reason. They never imagined it was healed by her own ability. If that was the case, it was truly possible she had a healing ability. Jasper saw their surprised expressions and continued, "If her ability really is a healing type, it might not be a bad thing for us. The beast world is full of dangers. We often go out hunting and getting injured is a daily occurrence. If we have someone with a healing ability by our side, we can get timely treatment." Kale came to his senses, a flicker of deep thought in his silver eyes, though no one knew what he was thinking. The four of them fell silent and returned to their respective caves to rest. "This is outrageous." Mia fumed to herself, her eyes filled with jealousy as she saw how the tribe was starting to change their attitude towards that vicious female. "Luna, I know you want to change everyone's opinion of you, but you can't joke with everyone's lives. These mushrooms are clearly poisonous, yet you lied and said they weren't." "What are you trying to do?" Mia demanded, having arrived first thing in the morning to cause trouble. This Mia is so annoying, like a fly buzzing around a latrine, Luna thought. Her face turned cold and she looked at Mia with icy eyes. "Whether these mushrooms are poisonous or not, I know perfectly well. I don't need you here fear-mongering." Her words only made Mia's face uglier. "Luna, you're lying. These mushrooms are obviously poisonous, but you claim they aren't. I think you're deliberately trying to poison everyone." Luna was furious, her expression turning to ice. She was done wasting her breath on Mia. Ignoring her completely, she looked at the other females and beastmen by the river. "These mushrooms really aren't poisonous. If you don't believe me, you can take some and have the tribe healer check them. See for yourselves if they're poisonous or not." The others present looked at each other. Seeing Luna's calm expression and clear eyes, they felt a flicker of belief. She had awakened a wood element ability, and so had the tribe's healer. It made sense she would know, but this was a matter of life and death. A few of the females took some mushrooms from her basket to go find the healer. Mia saw that Luna wasn't afraid of being checked, and the fire of rage burned brighter within her. She was about to sneer some more when she saw Riker standing not far away, just watching the show without helping her. Her face darkened even more. She didn't overthink it, assuming he was still angry because she hadn't let him touch her last night. She pouted with a mocking expression. "So, you've gotten bold, have you? Giving me an attitude. Seems like you haven't been taught a proper lesson yet." Mia shot Luna a glare, snorted coldly, and turned to leave. As she passed Maya, she felt that her sister was acting a bit strange today, her gaze a little guilty. She stopped, narrowing her eyes to study Maya. She had never paid much attention to her younger sister before, but now she noticed Maya was actually quite pretty. She had even started wearing makeup and had a pink flower pinned in her hair, which added a certain charm. This immediately displeased her. Maya tensed under Mia's sharp gaze, her face stiff. Sister, what's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that?" Mia stared at her, her tone unreadable. "You look very pretty today. It's a shame the flower in your hair is a bit ugly. Let me take it off for you." Without waiting for a reply, she reached up, snatched the pink flower from her sister's hair, threw it on the ground, and stomped on it viciously. Maya's face went white, her eyes filled with rage, but she held it back. "Sister," she said in a small voice, "if you don't like it, I just won't wear it anymore." Mia gave her a disdainful look. This sister of hers had been like this since they were children, bullied but never daring to speak up. How boring. She snorted contemptuously and walked away. Maya watched her sisters retreating back, her face dark as she silently ground her teeth. That wretched female is too much. Sooner or later I'll make her pay. Someone else with an equally dark expression was Riker. He watched Mia's retreating back with a grim look, then glanced at Maya before turning and striding away. Luna witnessed this scene with a slight twitch of her lips. That Mia seems to have some issues. She shook her head and didn't watch any longer, continuing to wash her mushrooms and vegetables. After cleaning her food, she slung the basket onto her back and prepared to leave. She had only taken a couple of steps when she saw the females who had left earlier returning. They all looked very excited and ran up to her. One of them, holding the mushroom, said enthusiastically, "Luna, these mushrooms really aren't poisonous. We just took them to the healer and she confirmed they're not poisonous and are safe to eat." The other females who had returned with her nodded in agreement. That's right. These mushrooms aren't poisonous at all. The healer even tested them on a wild beast and nothing happened. The females and beastmen still at the river were all astonished. Mushrooms really weren't poisonous and could be eaten. Then why had beastmen been poisoned by them before? Could it be that they really couldn't tell them apart? But if the healer said these mushrooms were safe, then they must be. Luna didn't know their thoughts, but could guess. She looked at the females in front of her and smiled faintly. I told you these mushrooms weren't poisonous. If you like, you can go into the forest and pick some. They're delicious in soup or grilled. But you must be careful to distinguish them. Absolutely do not pick brightly colored mushrooms. Those are truly poisonous. Only the ones with pale colors are safe, but it's not a hard and fast rule. When you pick them, it's best to bring them back for me to check. The females all nodded, indicating they understood. As they were about to leave, a female named Stella called out to her. Her eyes fell on the basket in Luna's hands, and she blushed, looking a little embarrassed. Could you teach us how to weave baskets? Luna was surprised they wanted to learn, but it made sense. The baskets were indeed very convenient. She smiled and nodded. Of course, but right now I have to dry my things and I have other things to do later. When I'm free, I'll teach you all. Anyone who wants to learn can come find me. Teaching one person is the same as teaching a group. It didn't matter to her, and it could also improve everyone's impression of her. Stella and the other females were overjoyed and said they would find her when she was free. They realized that Luna had changed a lot. She no longer seemed so detestable. She was still ugly, but her personality had become much more likable, and she was smarter and more clever. She was completely different from the lazy, gluttonous, mean-spirited, and boy-crazy Luna of the past. It was as if she had become a different person overnight. Maya stood not far away, a complicated expression on her face as she looked at Luna, but she didn't approach and quickly left. Luna had noticed Maya earlier, but paid her no mind. As long as she didn't come looking for trouble, Luna couldn't be bothered with her. If you provoke me, I can just expose you for cheating on your sister. What a shame for you that I happened to see you and Riker having fun together last night. Congratulations, host, for completing the hidden mission initial improvement of everyone's impression. The reward is a 30-pound weight loss. Would you like the weight loss to be evenly distributed or targeted to a specific area? Luna was stunned by the system's voice. There were hidden missions like this, and the reward was a 30-pound weight loss. This was truly an unexpected joy. She didn't answer right away, but looked down at her waist, which was covered in rolls of fat that sagged down past her buttocks. She really couldn't stand her own waist, or even her whole body. Everything about it was unbearable. Every part was ugly, just incredibly to the heavens ugly. All she could do was change it bit by bit. Target my waist. Per your command, the system is taking effect. Luna felt a strange sensation around her waist, as if something was gradually disappearing. She looked down and saw the fat on her waist shrinking at a rate visible to the naked eye. Although 30 pounds wasn't a very noticeable loss for her nearly 300-pound body, since it was all concentrated on her waist, the change was obvious. Her waist began to show a slight curve. She was still fat, but her waist had become firmer. Luna was in a great mood. Humming a tune, she began to lay out her mushrooms and vegetables to dry. Just as she finished and returned to her cave, she saw Asher approaching. He was carrying 2 wooden buckets and 2 wooden basins, all sanded smooth inside and out, looking very beautiful. Luna looked at Asher in surprise, not expecting him to be so quick. She had just mentioned wanting wooden buckets and basins last night, and today he had already made them and they looked great. Here. Asher nodded as if answering her unasked question. He didn't ask if she was satisfied. His fox claws were worn down from making these. He didn't want to do it again. His eyes lingered on her waist and he froze for a moment. Why does it feel like she got a lot thinner overnight, especially her waist? The rolls of fat are gone and there's a slight curve. Although she's still very fat overall to lose that much overnight. I wonder how she did it. Asher didn't ask how she had lost the weight. He handed her a piece of roasted meat he had brought. You haven't eaten anything this morning, have you? I just grilled this. Luna looked at the roasted meat, the fragrant aroma wafting into her nose. She had only nibbled on 2 wild bananas this morning and had been working all morning. They were long gone. She instinctively swallowed, desperately wanting to eat it, but then she remembered she had to lose weight. She forced herself to resist and didn't take it. Though she really wanted to eat, the revolution was not yet won. She still needed to work hard on her weight loss. "Asher, I ate wild fruit this morning. I'm still not hungry." The moment the words left her mouth, her stomach betrayed her with a loud, protesting gurgle. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Luna's face stiffened, so embarrassed her toes curled. Of all the times for her stomach to rumble, it had to be now deliberately sabotaging her. She stole a glance at Asher and saw the corner of his mouth twitching into a half-smile as he looked at her with a teasing expression. Her face flushed crimson, as red as a baboon's behind. Mortified, she bowed her head and started counting ants on the ground, racking her brain for a way to resolve this embarrassing situation. Asher knew she wasn't not hungry. She was just forcing herself not to eat to lose weight. The fact that she could do this was already a great improvement. He smiled faintly and didn't tempt her with the meat. He just said gently, "If you're not hungry, then just leave it for now. Eat it when you get hungry." Luna peeked at Asher and saw his normal expression. She breathed a sigh of relief, and the blush on her face faded a little. If it had been any of her other mates, they would have probably mocked her. Asher was truly a good person, much better than the other 4. Asher looked at her with her head bowed and her eyes downcast, and a warmth stirred in his heart. He suddenly realized that Luna had truly changed a lot. Her personality had become much more endearing. He blinked slowly and said nothing. "Didn't you say you wanted to build a stove? Let's go. While we have time now, I'll help you build it." Luna was about to answer when the system's voice sounded in her head. "Host Asher's favorability has increased by 10 points, bringing it to -20. Keep up the good work." Hearing the system's voice, she was stunned. Asher's favorability had increased by 10 points. She looked at him in surprise. Could it be because the disgusting fat on her waist was gone and she had refused his roasted meat, showing her firm determination to lose weight? She shook off her thoughts and smiled at Asher. "All right, let's build the stove to the left of the cave entrance. It's more spacious there." Asher nodded, having no objections. The 2 of them walked out of the cave and got busy. Luna cleared the area to the left of the entrance, pulling weeds and having Asher move rocks to clear a space for the stove. "Asher, go find some medium-sized rocks. They need to be somewhat flat, preferably about the same size for building the stove. Also find a larger, flatter rock. I plan to use it as a stovetop," she instructed him. Although Asher didn't quite understand, he followed her instructions and went to find rocks. Asher was very skillful and intelligent. It only took him half a day to build the stove according to Luna's description. She looked at the pig intestines she had marinated last night in the stone pot, then turned to Asher and smiled sweetly. "Asher, thank you for helping me build the stove. Don't grill meat for lunch. I'll make you something delicious. I guarantee you'll want more after you eat it." She planned to make stir-fried pork intestines using her culinary skills to win over Asher. Although she didn't have chili peppers, her cooking skills were decent, so the flavor should still be quite good. When Asher heard she was making something delicious, his eyes immediately fell on the marinated intestines in the stone pot, and his mouth twitched. He looked at her with a strange, disgusted expression. "The delicious food you're talking about is wild boar intestines. The beastmen in the tribe never ate organs or intestines, considering them filthy and always throwing them away. And now she was taking this stuff, making it into food, and planning to serve it to him." Asher felt a wave of nausea, his expression unreadable. "Asher, don't be put off by the smell. As long as they're cleaned properly, they'll be delicious. I guarantee you'll want more after you've had some." Asher's mouth twitched again. He found it really hard to imagine how these smelly intestines could be delicious. He didn't believe it. As a fox beastman, his sense of smell was naturally sharp and extremely sensitive to all kinds of odors. How could he possibly eat something so foul? Luna saw he didn't object and enthusiastically got to work. After preparing the ingredients and seasonings, she started a fire and began to stir-fry the intestines. As the temperature rose, the fat in the intestines rendered out, releasing a tantalizing aroma. Minced garlic, ginger, and chopped scallions were thrown into the stone pot, and the fragrance immediately exploded. The intestines were added and stir-fried, followed by some salt and various seasonings she had gathered from the forest. She cooked them over a high flame with practiced fluid motions. Asher watched from the side, mesmerized. He had never seen such a cooking technique. He sniffed the air cautiously. There was no foul smell at all. Instead, his nose was filled with a rich, fragrant aroma so good it made his mouth water. The gluttonous worm in his stomach was awakened, and his 9 tails even unconsciously appeared white as snow and soft, swaying back and forth behind him. The aroma quickly spread, attracting the attention of the other beastmen in the tribe. As the scent grew stronger, a crowd of beastmen and females gathered around Luna's cave. The onlookers stared at the delicious-smelling dish being stir-fried in the stone pot, unable to help but swallow. "What is that? Why does it smell so good?" one beastman couldn't help but ask. Luna paused and looked at the beastman. She recognized him as one of Stella's mates, Ridge, a 4th-tier beastman with considerable strength. She smiled and explained, "This is stir-fried wild boar intestines. It's delicious." Ridge was stunned to hear it was boar intestines. He couldn't smell any foul odor. In fact, it was incredibly fragrant. His eyes widened in disbelief, finding it hard to imagine that the smelly boar intestines could become so aromatic. The other beastmen and females also looked astonished. Mia squeezed in. The crowd smelled the fragrant air and seethed with jealousy. Since when did that ugly hag learn to cook and make something that smells so good? I really underestimated her. Then a thought struck her, and a look of schadenfreude crossed her face. That ugly hag made so many intestines. If she eats that much, she'll probably get diarrhea. A bad case of it. It would be best if she just diarrheaed to death. Kael, Ronan, Jasper, and Silas were also drawn by the aroma, wanting to see what could possibly smell so good. They were surprised to find the scent led them all the way to Luna's cave. Kael's silver eyes blinked. "What trick is this damn fat woman up to now, making something that smells like this?" He pushed through the crowd and into the cave, his eyes immediately falling on Luna, who was busy at the entrance. Then his gaze dropped to her waist, and he saw that the disgusting jiggly rolls of fat were gone, replaced by a slight curve. He was stunned, his face a mask of disbelief. He clearly remembered her waist being all fat just last night. Luna heard the murmuring around her but paid it no mind. She had finished stir-frying the intestines. She dished some out into a stone bowl. She had made a lot, and there was still plenty left in the pot. The aroma filled the air. She used chopsticks to pick up a piece of intestine and put it in her mouth. She noted that while it wasn't as good as the spicy stir-fried intestines she had eaten back on Earth, the taste wasn't bad. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Instantly, a chorus of swallowing sounds erupted from the crowd, all eyes fixed on the stone dish in her hands. She was startled for a moment, then handed the dish of intestines to Asher along with the chopsticks. "Try it," she said with a smile. "See how it tastes." Asher, who had long been drooling from the aroma, didn't stand on ceremony. He took the chopsticks, picked up a piece, and put it in his mouth, chewing lightly. His eyes instantly lit up his face, filled with disbelief. "It's delicious. It's really delicious." The intestines were stir-fried until they were crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. With each bite, the fat burst in his mouth, fragrant and savory, enhanced by the flavor of the various spices. It was simply irresistible. Asher had never eaten anything so delicious. He completely forgot it was made from intestines and ate without even looking up. His 9 tails swayed happily behind him, all semblance of the elegant and refined fox beastman gone. He looked exactly like a dog gnawing on a bone. Luna's mouth twitched at a loss for words. She looked up at Kael, Ronan, Jasper, and Silas, a half-smile on her face. "What, you guys want some too?" The 4 of them stiffened. How could they possibly want to eat something like that? This fat woman just 1 plate of stir-fried intestines, and she's made the proud fox beastman wolf down 10 large bowls. He even hugged the pot afterward, nearly driving the other 4 mates to death with rage. "It's all gone from the pot. If you want some, I can make another dish. I happen to have some cleaned organs in my cave from yesterday. They'll taste just as good as the intestines. Do you want some?" If it weren't for the sake of increasing their favorability, she wouldn't be bothered to cook for them. Their eyes immediately fell on her. Luna looked at their expectant yet suspicious gazes and secretly pouted, cursing them. "You damn men, you dare to doubt me!" Fine, I won't make it then. She cleared her throat and said unhappily, I'm not making it for you for free. You have to work. I happen to need a set of table and chairs in my cave. I'll draw you the design. What do you say? Want to eat? No work, no food. Ronan was the first to nod. Fine. We'll go make them for you now. Silas, though he said nothing, also nodded in agreement. Jasper snorted lightly, which was his way of agreeing. Seeing them agree, Luna found a branch and squatted down on a patch of soft ground, simply sketching the design for the table and chairs along with the necessary dimensions. Ronan, Jasper, and Silas gathered around to look. Even Kale came over curious. Luna looked at the beastmen and females gathered around her and chuckled inwardly. These are the table and chairs. Just follow this design. The dimensions are here too. The height must be right, not too high or too low, or it won't be comfortable to sit on. She looked at Ronan, and after a moment's thought said, Ronan, if it's inconvenient for you, you don't have to go. Ronan frowned, a hint of displeasure flashing across his cold face. Although his beast form was a snake, it didn't mean he couldn't do the work. Was this ugly female looking down on him? No need. I can do it, he said, coldly turning and leaving first. Jasper and Silas exchanged a look and followed without a word. Kael watched the three of them leave, a flicker of hesitation in his silver eyes. Luna saw his hesitation and sneered inwardly. She had deliberately not asked Kael to go, wanting to see if this jerk would offer on his own. You despise me, don't you? You look down on intestines, don't you? You look down on my cooking, don't you? Then don't eat. If you want to eat, you'll have to beg me. Kael saw her half-smiling face and the words "beg me" written all over it. His face darkened and he seethed with anger. This fat woman, not only is she ugly, but her heart is ugly too. She's really getting more and more detestable. Beg her? Absolutely not. He snorted coldly and left with a grim expression. Luna saw him leave and didn't care. I don't want to cook for you anyway. If you have the guts, then just hold out and don't ask. Let's see how long this jerk can last. Ding host warning warning. Kael's dislike level has skyrocketed and maxed out. Suddenly, a series of warnings from the system echoed in her head so loud her eardrums hurt. She was completely stunned. Just over a meal. Did this jerk have to be so petty? She frowned and couldn't help but reflect. Had she gone too far? After all, Kael was a peak 5th-tier beastman, half a step away from the 6th tier and the youngest powerhouse in the tribe. She took a deep breath, calming her frustration. So what if his dislike is maxed out? At worst, I'll just start over. He likes to eat, doesn't he? That's simple. I'll just switch up the delicious dishes in the future. I refuse to believe I can't bring his dislike level down. With that thought, her anger subsided. Although Kael's dislike level had maxed out, the favorability of her other mates had increased quite a bit. Because of this, Luna received another reward. System is proceeding with dental adjustment. It is best to adjust it slowly to avoid suspicion. Luna felt a gentle force surround her mouth as if it were adjusting her teeth. It was a very strange sensation. She focused her attention on her teeth, feeling the change. Although she couldn't see it, she could feel her teeth gradually becoming straight. But it would take 7 to 15 days to complete the adjustment. She didn't waste any time. She took all the organs she had cleaned last night and prepared them into various dishes. Although there were no chili peppers, she had plenty of seasonings and vegetables, as well as some wild fruits to add flavor, all of which she had gathered from the Tegan forest yesterday. There was stir-fried beef liver with thorn fruit, stir-fried pork intestines with ginger and garlic, fragrant braised beef tendon, light pork lung soup, and nourishing pork kidney soup. Each dish was made in a large quantity, enough for Ronan, Jasper, and Silas to eat. She tasted each one herself and found the flavors to be quite good. Though not as good as the dishes she had eaten in her past life, they had their own unique taste. Seeing the 2 bones she had brought back last night in the basket, she thought it was still early. She took them out, washed them, and put them in a clean stone pot to simmer for soup. She washed some shiitake mushrooms, tea tree mushrooms, dried bamboo shoots, and lion's mane mushrooms, and added them to the pot along with 2 slices of ginger. She started a fire and let it simmer slowly. The stone pot retained heat well, but simmering bone broth took a long time. It was now mid-afternoon. It would be at least evening before it was ready to drink. She didn't know when Ronan and the others would be back. Luna looked at the nourishing pork kidney soup and wondered if she should take some to that jerk Kale. But after how she had treated him at noon to go running to him with soup now, she really didn't have the face for it. But if she didn't, that jerk already disliked her to the max. If she didn't do something, he might end up hating her to death. This conquest mission would probably never progress, let alone get any rewards from the system. If she brought it now, she would definitely be humiliated by him. Forget it. I won't take it. Why bring humiliation upon myself? Luna gritted her teeth and decided to put her dignity first. As a result, the entire bowl of pork kidney soup went into her own stomach. It's over. I just drank a whole big bowl of pork kidney soup. My weight loss efforts are all for nothing, she thought, filled with regret. Meanwhile, Kale was fuming in his own cave. His dwelling was at the top of the mountain, a spacious cave that was his private territory. Few beastmen or females usually came to bother him. Kale sat on his stone bed, his face so dark it looked like a layer of frost could be scraped off it. He was fiddling with a sharp bone spike, his silver eyes filled with a ferocious light, a "don't mess with me" expression on his face. That damn fat woman is really getting more and more out of line and more detestable, he cursed, grinding his teeth. But his mind couldn't help but conjure up Luna's provocative face. The more he thought, the angrier he got. The bone spike in his hand creaked under his grip. He suddenly stood up, preparing to go hunting. Although there was no shortage of food today, he still wanted to go out and hunt. Otherwise, this anger had nowhere to go, and was about to suffocate him. Just as he stepped out of the cave, a gentle breeze blew, carrying a faint, fragrant smell of food up from the foot of the mountain. Kale's steps immediately halted. He took a deep breath of the fragrant air, a look of suspicion in his silver eyes. This scent was clearly the smell of some kind of food, very enticing, just like the stir-fried intestines Luna had made at noon. It made his mouth water. That damn fat woman, all she does all day is eat, eat, eat. Why doesn't she just eat herself to death? His face grew even uglier dark as he cursed under his breath, then continued on his way. Luna had just returned from the lake with 2 buckets of water when she saw someone stealing her food from a distance. She looked closer and saw it was Morgana standing in front of the stove, constantly grabbing food with her hands and stuffing it into her mouth, eating until her mouth and hands were slick with grease. She looked like she hadn't eaten in hundreds of years. Luna's eyes narrowed instantly, her face turning cold. This old woman who had abused the original Luna so much was now here stealing her food. Stealing was one thing, but to use her bare hands to grab it, wasn't that disgusting? It was truly revolting. Her face grim, she walked over with the buckets of water and slammed them down on the ground with a heavy thud. Morgana, who was happily gorging herself, hadn't noticed anyone approaching. The sudden sound startled her, and the food in her mouth got stuck in her throat, unable to go up or down. It was agonizingly uncomfortable. It took her a long moment to swallow it down and feel a little better. She turned to look behind her and saw Luna standing there looking at her coldly. Morgana was startled and felt a twinge of guilt. But then she remembered she was this damn girl's mother, and that feeling of guilt instantly vanished. "You're back, and you don't even say anything. Are you trying to scare your mother to death?" Morgana glared at her and began to scold her. Luna looked at her guilty yet arrogant expression and sneered inwardly. This old woman has the nerve to act so righteous after stealing my food. She didn't hold back. "Who gave you permission to eat my food?" she said coldly. Morgana immediately flew into a rage, pointing at her nose. "I'm your mother. What's wrong with eating a little of your food, and what kind of attitude is this?" Luna was so angry she laughed, her eyes growing even colder. "Does this old woman have any shame?" she sneered sarcastically. "You know you're my mother. Then please tell me, how do you usually treat me? Do you even consider me your daughter?" Morgana's face turned from green to white. "How dare you say I don't consider you my daughter? If I didn't, I would have thrown you into the forest for the wild beasts to eat long ago," she raged. Luna curled her lip in a mocking smile. "This shameless old woman talks so boldly as if I owe her something." She sneered, her eyes full of sarcasm. "Then I really have to thank you. Thank you for not throwing me into the forest for the wild beasts to eat, and thank you for taking care of me all these years." She deliberately emphasized the words, taking care, the sarcasm unmistakable. Morgana, of course, heard it and immediately became furious. "Luna, what do you mean by that?" She rolled her eyes, ignoring Morgana's anger. "It means exactly what it sounds like," she said coldly. Morgana was so angry her face turned pale. She wanted nothing more than to rush over and tear her mouth apart. But then she remembered the purpose of her visit and forced herself to suppress her anger. However, her face was still extremely ugly, her eyes dark as she glared at her and said through gritted teeth, "I heard you used your ability to whip Mia last night. She deserved it." Morgana trembled with rage. She raised her hand and slapped hard at her face. Luna's eyes turned cold. With lightning speed, she grabbed Morgana's wrist, her voice icy. "Morgana, you'd better think carefully about the consequences of this slap." The implication was clear: if that slap landed, she would return it tenfold, 100-fold. Morgana's wrist was caught, and it felt like it was being clamped by the claws of a wild beast. The pain made her face turn pale. She angrily looked up at Luna and met her cold, murderous eyes. She was terrified. When did this wretched female become so scary? She used to be so afraid of me she would hide whenever she saw me. She would never look at me with such eyes. This is rebellion. The thought made Morgana even angrier, and the pain in her hand intensified. She couldn't help but struggle. "Luna, let go of me," she raged. Luna didn't let go. Instead, she tightened her grip, her voice cold. "Morgana, I really don't understand. I'm your daughter, yet you side with Mia time and time again. Does Mia have some special relationship with you?" Morgana's face instantly changed, a flicker of panic in her eyes, but she tried to remain calm. "What nonsense are you talking about? What relationship could Mia possibly have with me? I just see that she's well-behaved and has been without a mother since she was young. I feel sorry for her, so I treat her a little better." "Is that so?" "It had better be. If I find out you're treating Mia well at my expense, then don't blame me for being impolite." She had originally intended to use this secret to threaten the old woman and make her back off a bit. But then she considered that Morgana had quite a few lovers, and they were all powerful beastmen. If she pushed her too far, a cornered dog would bite back. There was no telling what she might do. Luna didn't believe Morgana had much motherly affection for her. If her secrets were threatened, it was very likely she would kill to silence her. With that thought, she abandoned the idea. It was better to be a little more restrained until she had absolute strength. Morgana didn't know what she was thinking, but she felt a vague sense of guilt, especially when she met Luna's half-smiling eyes. She always felt as if her secrets were being seen through. She knew she wouldn't gain any advantage today, so she left with an angry expression, casting a lingering, reluctant glance at the half-eaten dishes on the stove. Luna watched Morgana's retreating back, a cold smile on her lips. To think she had just grabbed the food with her bare hands, how disgusting. She couldn't eat these dishes now. She suspected that Ronan and the others wouldn't eat them either if they knew Morgana had touched them with her hands. Fortunately, she still had the bone and mushroom soup simmering in the pot. By the time Ronan and the others returned, it should be ready to drink. If it wasn't enough, she could just make more later. After all, the tribe had ingredients. She glanced at the dishes Morgana had pawed at, her eyes flashing. She used her chopsticks to neaten them up so they didn't look so messy, then decided to take them to Garrett. After all, he and Morgana were mates. They shouldn't be picky about each other. Besides, it was a good opportunity to probe his attitude towards Morgana and Mia. This fat woman, just with one delicious meal she had made the 4 beastmen who despised her fight to work for her. Looking at the finished table and chairs, Luna was very satisfied. With a table and chairs, the cave already felt a little more like a home. Her gaze fell on Jasper and Silas, and she said with a smile, "Your craftsmanship isn't bad. I thought you'd make something misshapen." Jasper snorted, a hint of disdain in his eyes. "Misshapen? You think we're all as clumsy as you? If we can't even make something this simple, we'd be a laughingstock." Silas, on the other hand, walked to one side as if he hadn't heard Luna's praise. To him, such compliments were worthless. He preferred to prove his abilities through practical actions, not by relying on others' praise. Luna looked at Jasper's disdainful expression and pouted. This sharp-tongued man never missed an opportunity to mock her. She didn't get angry. Instead, she smiled sweetly and said, "Jasper, since you're so skilled, next time I'll have you make something more complicated. Let's see if you can do it." Jasper snorted coldly and turned his head away, saying nothing more. He wasn't stupid. He knew what this fat woman was up to. His claws were worn down from making these things today, and it was incredibly painful. He didn't even know if it would affect his hunting tomorrow. If it weren't for the delicious food Luna made, he wouldn't have done it. Silas's gaze fell on Luna, his meaning clear without words. He had smelled the rich aroma of meat the moment he entered the cave, and the gluttonous worm in his stomach had been awakened. Luna understood his meaning. She smiled and went to the cave entrance, ladling a bowl of bone and mushroom soup for him. "Originally, I made some other delicious dishes with organs this afternoon, but while I was out getting water, my mother came and ate them. Although there's still a lot left, I figured you guys wouldn't eat it since she grabbed it with her hands, so I took it all to my father." After speaking, she looked at Silas and handed him the bowl of soup. "It's fresh out of the pot, be careful, it's hot." She also handed him a pair of chopsticks and, fearing he wouldn't know how to use them, explained how. Silas took the soup and chopsticks. Though his face was cold, a hint of satisfaction flashed in his eyes. Thinking of what she had just said, he said lightly, "I'll make you something for the cave entrance to keep people out." He was clearly displeased with Morgana's thieving hand-grabbing behavior. Luna was delighted. She had only said it casually, not expecting Silas to offer to make a door for her. That was really great. She looked at him, her eyes curving into a bright smile. "Thank you, Silas. There's plenty of soup in the pot, feel free to have as much as you want. If it's not enough, I'll make another dish when the stone pot is free." Silas grunted softly, his eyes on her as if to say, "You've got good taste." This pot of soup was, of course, not enough for the three of them. No matter how delicious it was mostly water. One trip to the latrine and it would be gone. They would definitely be hungry by midnight and would naturally need to eat something else. He took the bowl of soup into the cave, sat on a chair, and placed the bowl on the table. Though he wasn't skilled with chopsticks, he had seen Asher use them before, and with Luna's explanation, he managed to imitate the movements, though they were still a bit clumsy and not very flexible. His eating etiquette was extremely elegant, not at all like other beastmen who ate like ravenous wolves. Even though this soup was so delicious he wanted to swallow his tongue, he still looked very refined. Jasper saw this and quickly sat down, saying impolitely to Luna, "Where's mine?" Luna glanced at him, said nothing, and quickly ladled a bowl of soup for him. "When you're done, go get your own from the stone pot." Jasper took the bowl, grunted softly, and then ignored her completely, his full attention captivated by the bone and mushroom soup. After fumbling with the chopsticks a few times, he began to eat without looking up, practically burying his face in the bowl. Ronan returned, dragging a processed deer. He immediately saw Silas and Jasper eating without looking up, and his mood soured. He casually threw the deer on the ground and walked straight to the stone pot. Seeing there was still a lot of soup inside, his expression softened a little. But he was puzzled. He remembered Luna saying she was going to make organs for them. Why was it 2 bones and mushrooms in a soup? No matter how delicious this soup was, it was just water and couldn't fill his stomach. He didn't wait for Luna. He picked up an empty stone bowl from the stove and ladled a full bowl of soup, more than half of which was mushrooms. He also fished out a bone and placed it on top of the bowl. Though he didn't know what was so good about 2 bare bones, since Luna had put them in the soup, they must be good. Luna saw this and her mouth twitched. She walked over and said, "That bone is for making the soup. There's no meat on the surface, but there's marrow inside. You can crack it open and suck it out. It's good for you, very nourishing." Ronan glanced at her, grunted softly in reply, and took a pair of chopsticks. He carried the soup into the cave, sat down on a chair, and began to eat. The taste was just as he had expected, truly delicious, a delicacy he had never tasted before. It was hard to imagine that just by cooking 2 bones and some mushrooms together, you could create such a wonderful flavor. It was so good he couldn't get enough. Silas and Jasper had long since finished the soup in their bowls. Without needing Luna's help, they went to the pot themselves and ladled more bowl after bowl, unable to stop. The mushrooms in the pot were soon all gone, not a single one left. They almost came to blows over the last bone. "Hurry up and finish the rest of the soup in the stone pot. I have to cook the deer meat later. If you don't want any, I won't make it." Hearing this, Silas and Jasper stopped fighting and quickly sped up their soup drinking. The three of them drank the soup with expectant expressions, their speed increasing. In the stone pot at the cave entrance, the deer meat was simmering, bubbling, and steaming, the fragrant aroma wafting into their noses. The three of them waited with great anticipation. "It will take some time for the deer meat to be ready. You three are just standing there anyway. Why don't you make me a few wooden bowls the same size as the stone bowls? And while you're at it, make 5 or 6 plates the same style as the stone plate over there, plus 2 larger soup bowls." Ronan, Jasper, and Silas, though they didn't really want to move, thought of the deer meat in the stone pot, and in the end didn't refuse. They quickly left the cave to make what Luna wanted. By now it was completely dark. On the tribe square, a roaring bonfire had been lit. The whole tribe was filled with that enticing aroma that had been wafting since noon and hadn't stopped. "Is she a pig eating so much? Isn't she afraid of getting fat and dying?" Kale cursed under his breath, his face dark. In his heart, he knew Luna was cooking for Ronan, Jasper, and Silas, but he still cursed her like that, as if insulting her would make him feel a little better. At the same time, he couldn't help but admit that the fat woman's cooking skills were truly excellent, so good that even he, who utterly despised her, couldn't help but be tempted. But being tempted didn't mean he would go and beg that ugly hag. Kale's heart grew even more frustrated. He looked down and saw that the wooden branch in his hand had been crushed into splinters. He frowned casually, threw it on the ground, dusted off his hands, and stood up, striding away from the square. He had only taken a few steps when Mia called out to him. "Kyle, why do you look so upset?" Kale's steps faltered. He glanced at Mia approaching him, a look of disgust flashing in his silver eyes. He didn't bother to answer and simply walked away. In his eyes, Mia was just a pretty face with an arrogant, unlikable personality. She was also insatiably greedy. She already had 7 mates, but still wasn't satisfied and wanted to have them as well. She should take a look at whether they had the time at night. Mia saw him ignore her and walk away, her face extremely ugly. "Damn you, Kale. In what way am I not as good as that ugly hag?" She looked in the direction he had gone, stomped her foot angrily, and cursed under her breath. But then she smelled the fragrant meat in the air, and her face darkened even more. This aroma had been wafting since noon non-stop, making her drool so much that she had no appetite for the roasted meat at night. She thought of Morgana, and a hint of dissatisfaction and resentment appeared in her eyes. She had thought she could get a taste of the food that ugly hag made through her mother, but it was already evening and there was still no news. She didn't know if the hag hadn't let her mother bring any back, or if her mother had secretly eaten it all herself without sharing. In any case, she was very unhappy right now, and everyone she looked at was an eyesore. As Kyle left the square and passed near Luna's cave, he saw Ronan in his beast form. His giant black tail coiling up and slamming down with a loud crack, splitting a thick log on the ground into several sections. Jasper and Silas, one transformed into an azure moon wolf, and the other into a nether dark wolf, were each holding a section of wood hunched over and constantly clawing at it as if trying to shape it into something. Kale was puzzled. At first he didn't understand what they were doing. He stood there and watched for a while until the objects gradually took shape. Then he realized they were making wooden bowls. He was stunned. He couldn't believe these 3 guys would work so hard just to eat that fat woman's food. He grew even angrier, feeling like he was being isolated. He snorted coldly and was about to turn and leave when he saw Luna standing at the cave entrance, looking in his direction. From a distance, she shouted to him, "Kale, if you want some, come and lend a hand. The more people, the faster it will go." Kale's steps faltered. He looked at Luna with a strange expression. She wanted him to help. What a pipe dream. He stared at her for a moment. Was it his imagination, or did her teeth not seem so prominent anymore? Even her mouth looked smaller. He frowned, not understanding what was going on, but didn't think much of it, just attributing it to the dim light. Thinking of what she had just said, he said coldly, "Why should I help you?" Luna wasn't surprised by his reaction. It would be strange if this jerk who disliked her to the max agreed so easily. She smiled faintly. Of course you can choose not to help, but the food I make is only for those who help. If you don't help, there won't be any for you when it's done. Hearing this, Kale's face immediately darkened. This damn fat woman dared to threaten him. He was not only a rare silver moon wolf, a peak 5th tier beastman, half a step away from the 6th tier, but also the strongest in the entire tribe besides the chief. Ronan was at best on par with him. When had he ever suffered such humiliation? He smelled the fragrant meat in the air and his face grew even uglier. The damned aroma, the damned temptation. In the end, his pride won out. He snorted coldly and turned to leave with long strides. Luna watched his retreating back, a smirk on her lips, showing no major reaction. A proud and stubborn man with an especially high sense of self-worth. That's what strength brings. If one time doesn't work, then twice. If twice doesn't work, then 3 times. I have patience and confidence. Sooner or later, I will make this jerk willingly work for me and even love me. Besides, I have the system as my golden needle. Conquering Kale is just a matter of time. With that thought, she turned and went back into the cave to check if the deer meat in the pot was done. Ronan, Jasper, and Silas watched Kale's retreating back, and a single thought flashed through all their minds. Are we a little too spineless to listen to her and work just for a bite to eat? The 3 of them looked at each other and saw the shame in each other's eyes, especially Ronan, whose strength was no less than Kale's. He suddenly felt a sense of being outdone. Actually, it was because their ways of getting along were different. If Ronan and Kale switched places, he wouldn't have bowed his head so easily. Ronan was cold and taciturn. Although he didn't have Kale's domineering personality, the pride in his bones was no less than his. It was just that their initial ways of getting along were different. Though he didn't like Luna and even felt some disgust, there was no conflict between them. He helped make things, and Luna was responsible for making delicious food for them. It was just a fair trade. There was no issue of losing face or not. With that thought, the feeling of being outdone and losing face instantly vanished. He continued to work. The deer meat in the pot was done. Luna ladled it out into the wooden bowls that Ronan, Jasper, and Silas had just made. The 3 of them ate without looking up, as if they wanted to swallow their own tongues. They had never eaten anything so delicious. It was truly too good. Especially the broth, it was so fresh and savory. They had no idea Luna's cooking skills were so good. Though she was a bit ugly, her cooking skills were truly not bad. It seemed she wasn't so detestable after all. It would be great if we could come here for food in the future. This was the unanimous thought in their minds as they ate with greasy mouths, wolfing down the food like a whirlwind sweeping away clouds. Ding, congratulations, host. Ronan's favorability has skyrocketed and is now at 0, reaching a state of indifference. You are rewarded with 1 weight loss pill. Ding, congratulations, host. Jasper's favorability has skyrocketed and is now at 0, reaching a state of indifference. You are rewarded with 1 skin whitening pill. Ding, congratulations, host. Silas's favorability has skyrocketed and is now at 0, reaching a state of indifference. You are rewarded with 10 packs of system-produced sanitary pads. Luna, who was happily eating, was suddenly stunned by a series of sounds from the system. When she snapped out of it, she was ecstatic. She remembered the last time she checked their favorability, the 3 of them were still in the negative. For it to increase so quickly this time was truly beyond her expectations. As expected to conquer a man's heart, you must first conquer his stomach. Though it was just indifference, at least it wasn't dislike. It was a good start. Luna still chose to become beautiful slowly so as not to arouse suspicion. As she finished her conversation with the system, she discovered the 3 of them had already eaten all the deer meat. She knew beastmen had large appetites, but to finish such a large pot was still quite impressive. Just then, a female named Iris ran over, shouting, "Luna, it's terrible! Something's happened to your mother!" Luna was startled by her loud voice and the way she rushed right up to her. The wooden bowl in her hand almost fell to the ground. "Something's happened to my mother. What happened?" Actually, she had already guessed a little. The words she had said to Garrett this afternoon must have had an effect. After she left, Garrett must have sent beastmen to investigate Morgana. From the looks of it, they must have discovered Morgana's secret affair with Blaze. Ronan, Jasper, and Silas, while eating, perked up their ears, wanting to know what had happened to Luna's mother. It wasn't just women who liked to gossip. Men did too. Iris panted for 2 breaths before speaking. I don't know the specifics, I just heard that your mother and the tribe's beastman Blaze were having a secret affair. Even Mia and Maya are their children. I don't know how the chief found out. The chief was furious and threw your mother into the dungeon. Blaze's legs were broken and now they're preparing to exile him from the wolf tribe. The whole tribe is in an uproar. Even the priestess and the healer have gone over. Mia and Maya are crying and begging the chief. It's a chaotic mess outside. Luna sighed inwardly. What was bound to happen happened. Morgana had brought this upon herself. Let's go and see, she said to Iris, then stood up and left the cave. No matter what, Morgana was the original Luna's mother. Now that something had happened, if she didn't go and see, she really couldn't bear it.